City Council for the City of Rollingwood will come to order Wednesday, January 21st, 2026 at 7 p.m. We'll begin with roll call.
Brooke Brown.
Kevin Shell.
Kevin Glassine.
Phil McDuffie.
Sarah Hudson.
Gavin Maskell being quorum present. We will move on to public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment on items not on the agenda? Seeing none signed up and none on Zoom, we will move on to presentations. Agenda item number 2, presentation and discussion on the quarterly investment report for the first quarter. Abel?
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, the city of Rollingwood has all the investments with TexPool. The city currently has about $800,000 invested with TexPool, and it's split up between the general fund, water fund, and wastewater fund. General fund and wastewater each have about 40-something%, and the remainder is in the water fund. The interest we received in the first quarter of the fiscal year was about $8,000, and the yield for the quarter was approximately a little bit over 4%, and it trended up a little bit from the previous months. So that's where we are on the investments.
All right. That was your grand finale.
That's it. Any questions?
Any questions for Abel? All right. It's still a lot better than it used to be. Enjoy those rates while you got them. Any other questions on agenda item number 2? All right. Moving off agenda item number 2 on to agenda item number 3, presentation and discussion on the budget review for the first quarter.
For the first quarter, the month of December, revenue is picking up obviously because of property tax collections. The sales taxes are starting to pick up. We started out the quarter kind of slow, but it has really picked up to where right now we're at, let's see, about 27% of the budget, and the fiscal year is 25%. So I believe we'll be where we need to be at the end of the year on sales tax collections. On water sales are lagging a little bit behind in terms of we compare the water sales to the previous year at the same time. We're about 5% less than we were a year ago on water sales. On wastewater revenues, we're up compared to the previous year. We're at 110% of what we collected of the previous year. The general fund, we're at 110% on the revenue side of what we were a year ago. And so as far as revenues, all in all for the general fund, we're in good shape. The water fund, though, is still lagging about 5% less than we were a year ago. Wastewater, the revenue side, we're up about 9% more than we were a year ago. So I really can't explain the difference between the water and wastewater in terms of the revenue differences. It may have to do with the weather, but I don't have an explanation readily available for you. Also, at this time of the year, since we're just getting started, it's hard to predict where we will be moving forward. So this is just for the first quarter of the fiscal year. So any questions?
Any questions for Abel? All right. Thank you, Abel. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
With that, we will move off of agenda item number 3 on to agenda item number 4, update and discussion on the Rollingwood Police Department and law enforcement. I'll ask the chief to come up. Thank you, Chief. I placed this on the agenda. We did a similar version of this about a year ago. We talked, Chief, that we'll try to kind of make this an annual event where we kind of recap the year before, year over year, in terms of crime incidents and those sorts of issues. I know that you've had a chance to pull some data and look at some year over year numbers, and if you would, just kind of walk through a few of those highlights.
Right, so what we're looking at is that we did have in 2024, what we're looking at is when we looked at the residential numbers, we went from 18 incidents, which involved vehicles, which are gonna be your burglary vehicles and your theft of motor vehicles. And this last year, we had 16, with a slight decrease. But when we looked at the data, what we're showing is that all motor vehicles that were stolen were unlocked with the keys left inside the vehicles. And it's gonna pretty much be the same way when it comes to burglary of motor vehicles where the vehicles were left unlocked. And so what we're looking at is that the residential crime is showing to be more of a crime of opportunity to where the, suspects have easy access inside the vehicles. And so that's one of the biggest things that we're trying to push right now is just to ensure that you provide that first line of protection on your property, which is just removing your valuables and locking your vehicles as well.
So there were 18 in 2024 and 16 for residential in 25.
That's correct.
Okay, and then, and that's for residential only. Now that doesn't get into like the Trader Joe's parking lot and some of the commercial areas where there are a few more, but those are typically not residential.
That is correct. So we did have, during ACL, we did have a uptick in the business area where we had multiple that were broken into. But it is gonna be, like I said, in the business area.
Got it. Okay. Do you look at traffic count, traffic citations and any of those sorts of issues?
We did, and so our traffic enforcement in 2024 to the 2025, we had a 32% increase in traffic citations that were issued. And so, like I said, I mean, we're out here doing our due diligence.
Was a good uptick. I know we had this council and others had encouraged you to increase that enforcement. So
Yes, sir.
a 1/3 increase over year is a good increase. What else did you look at?
So we kind of looked at parking citations. Parking citations also increased 20%. And so we just kind of looked at the overall statistics of when it comes to our crime, our enforcement as well, and things like that. We also looked at just overall, like, how are we processing the scenes and things like that. And so what we take pride in is that we still respond to every single call that you make to us. We process your vehicle, we do everything else. We submit prints to DPS, we process the entire thing.
And you do pull prints on all of those. Anytime you respond, you're pulling prints on vehicles?
Yes, sir. With the owner's permission, we do ask, obviously, because we are going to throw powder on your vehicle. And so with the parents.
Not to name names, but the large city that we border, do they do that?
No, sir. A lot of times you'll be hard pressed to even have them show up.
Okay. Just wondering. Okay, keep going.
And so that's the thing is, and because of that, like I said, we have some leads on suspects. We also, we do go and ask the community, do you have video? And like I said, we do investigate it completely. And so that's kind of where we are. And because we do investigate the entire thing, some things just move slowly. And I just would like the community to understand that sometimes you don't have the quick turnaround, but we also do have feedback in video where it shows that our officer was not too far behind where the crime occurred. We actually have where we show a vehicle that we pursued just because they were a suspicious vehicle. That turns out that they were a suspect in an attempted burglary. And then we also were right there on scene when we.
And that was one that happened recently, right? Where we knew about it from dispatch because it had occurred in Westlake Hills. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, sir. That's the correct one.
And so you knew in real time because of the dispatch something that occurred in Westlake Hills, and then we were on alert. So,
and checking the area, that is correct. And then we did locate the vehicle.
And it just parked on a street.
Blacked out,
turned its lights off.
Yep.
And that resulted in
a short pursuit that we did have to terminate.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay. And we terminate a pursuit. We will pursue and obviously the more serious the crime or the incident, the further this pursuit might go, but typically, we try to not pursue into a neighboring jurisdiction if it looks like it's gonna endanger
Right.
safety of. in
That
the
is
pursuit.
correct. So we do have policy and procedures when it comes to pursuits. I mean, obviously, if it's a traffic violation, we're not gonna put anybody at risk for a Class C traffic violation.
Now, was that at night?
That was at night.
To your knowledge, in the last 10 years, have we ever not had a night patrol?
Negative. We will never allow this city to go unmanned.
Okay. And without getting into too many details, we're also running a few extra shifts on occasion where we think that there may be the need on a particular weekend or holiday or that sort of thing.
That is
right?
correct.
Okay, cool. All right. Where are we on staffing issues? I know, and maybe just for those who haven't heard our discussion on this topic, numerous discussions on this topic in the past, the nationwide issue, a shortage of law enforcement, certified law enforcement. Everyone's having trouble filling their rosters. But talk to us a little bit about what we've done and where we are in our staffing recruits.
Of course. So currently, right now, we do have one who's in the academy who's being sponsored by us, who is set to graduate in March. And then once he comes out of the academy, he does go on to FTO, which is his field training process. And then we also have one who is completing his FTO, which is his field training process, coming probably will be released in February. And then we have 2 positions, and we currently have multiple people in backgrounds. And so we're hoping to, so we are moving in the right direction and hoping to be fully staffed here soon.
And tell us again about the importance of those backgrounds, about what you're looking for, what you're trying to vet, how you're checking that in that vetting process when you're hiring someone.
Right, so what we're looking for, obviously, we don't want to bring any baggage to the city, right? And we're a small agency, so we don't want to bring anybody who has baggage who can create a cancer inside the agency either. And we also want to make sure who we're putting inside of your home and on our streets is obviously deserving of being there, right? I mean, I wouldn't trust somebody inside your home that I wouldn't trust inside my own. And so what we had discussed in the past is that it's easy. We have applicants. I can fill our roster tomorrow if we'd like, but we want to make sure they are completely vetted and with no previous issues or people that we can trust in there.
Okay, great. And what was I know we had an unfortunate shots fired incident. What was your response time on that evening?
We were there within seconds. I mean, the officer actually
It's around
heard.
15 seconds is what I
Mhm.
counted. So
Mhm.
kudos to you all on that response time.
Thank you.
So. All right, any questions for council? I mean, for Chief. Council, do you have any questions for Chief?
I have a question. But before I ask the question, I want to tell you and the mayor how much we appreciate this briefing and update. It's very helpful.
No problem.
And, you know, it's important information. I'm glad y'all are getting it out there. And I appreciate all the efforts you guys have made and all the improvements you've made. And I'm really personally glad to see the enforcement kicking up with the citations, both for moving violations and parking. So thanks for all that. And also want to congratulate you for that response time. That's pretty amazing, 15 seconds. Because I know there were other things going on that night too.
Correct.
It wasn't the only incident occurring in Rollingwood that night. My question is about license plate reader cameras. I know, you know, we'd started talking, I don't know how long it's been, a year ago, about flock cameras. And, you know, the council and a lot of the citizens raised very legitimate concerns about flock, privacy, data security, contract issues, you know, who controls the data, who can access the data. And so we shelved it, but one of the things I want to keep doing is finding a solution where we can have real-time alerts when a stolen vehicle enters Rollingwood, because to me that's the key benefit of the license plate readers, is that it would alert our officers, because a lot of this criminal mischief that goes on is conducted with stolen vehicles. When they're stealing cars, they're using stolen cars, right? And is my understanding of is very common.
That is correct.
And so if we had this real-time alert, it would be great. If there's some way we could have a better company with a better contract that would maybe not store the data on the cloud, or maybe contractually give us more privacy and security reassurances. And I know some of the citizens, and I don't know if he's talked to you, but Craig Cummings has volunteered to work with some other citizens about trying to explore, because I know that's a big ask to say, go out and find out which license plate readers have decent contracts and address our security concern. But so I certainly personally would welcome any help in that regard. But I just wanted to ask where you were on that, and if you have any thoughts about it.
Right, so what we're looking at right now is possibly looking at a camera system that has some type of a closed loop that, because I know data is a concern, and so what we're looking at is creating something that obviously is going to be stored that we actually have 100% possession of or control over. And it might not provide real-time alerts per se as far as the license plate readers, but the ability to be able to view the cameras live. That way the officer can kind of monitor that as.
And I'll jump in here. Chief has, and her staff at my direction, have started researching this a little more and a little differently, and it's what Chief just alluded to. I have for many years expressed concerns, privacy concerns over the cameras, and have typically not expressed my lack of support for them. It's obviously that's where I was when I was on council. It's a policy decision for council now, but personally that's still sort of where I am. However, it does occur to me, and I had a long conversation with Chief about it. I did some of my own research as well. And it really occurred to me when I was at my office building and looking at my own security camera footage that is closed loop and isn't housed in the cloud. And I can sit in my living room at night and look at my garage and look at the alleyway and look at the front door of my office building downtown. That type of security surveillance overnight, I think there is merit to that, and it interests me. Because if we have 1 or 2 units running at night and we can put some sort of real-time monitoring system in the patrol vehicle so that 1 or 2 officers who are patrolling at night can in real time monitor all 7 entrances to the city, there is merit in that, and that is a force multiplier in my opinion, and making sure that we have that we're empowering our officers to be able to truly monitor all of this, our small neighborhood, in the overnight hours. And so with that said, I have some interest in it. That's kind of the direction we've been going. I still have some concerns. I think that the only way, or at least what I would encourage council to do, if we can find that type of solution, I think it needs to go hand in glove with some ordinance changes and some best practices that go in the ordinance of how the data can be used, some audit requirements, some transparency requirements. There's a number of those types of policy issues that have arisen, and some best practices that have been recommended nationwide. And so I do think if we can figure out some of the logistics of what they're researching right now, if it can be a closed loop system, if that real-time monitoring can occur in the vehicles, that is what I'm most interested in for the officers, and couple that with some policy best practices, then at least I think it's ripe for a more robust discussion at council. That's where I am. Again, it's your policy decision, but I've asked Chief to sort of proceed down that road to try to prepare that issue for your consideration in that way. So.
And may I?
Yeah.
And I do appreciate all of that. I do think that could be a good step. From my perspective, the key benefit of any cameras is the real-time alert you can get of a stolen vehicle entering Rollingwood from an LPR, because that allows our police to proactively respond. I mean, it might be good to watch the real-time video of the entrances at night. You're not going to see license plates on those videos. I'm not so sure how useful it is unless you're looking for where a specific vehicle may enter or exit, maybe like we had with Westlake alerts you that there's something going on, you can watch for that vehicle. I could see it being useful in that circumstance, but, you know, just the alert that a criminal has entered Rollingwood at 3 a.m. in their car is pretty useful information, you know, for vehicle burglaries, and especially with us having had this unfortunate shooting situation, incident, you know, like, the response was great, but when did they enter the neighborhood? And could we have had an alert 5 or 10 minutes before then, which then might have prevented a shooting incident from occurring, is what I'm.
Right. But I want some transparency here, right? Because you have to, if that vehicle was just stolen, it also has to be entered into
True.
TCIC, NCIC, and then also has to be put into the Flock database. Let's say we used Flock, and we'd have to put it in there, and that would create the alert. So there's still some lag time in order for the agency that the vehicle was stolen out of, that they have to also.
And in many instances, they're stealing a vehicle in one location, but they're using that same vehicle that night.
And that's
So
what I'm
it-
saying,
it-
that's what's happening, and so,
I
and
see.
the other thing is too, if they
It's
they
not
steal
like
it
it's
at
their,
2:00 in the morning, and the
Right.
person doesn't know that they stole their vehicle.
it's not like that's their stolen vehicle for the
and-
week.
Right,
Like, oh, that's the one we're using this week. Like, it's kind of a real time.
right, and so that's why I don't wanna lead you in the wrong direction to think that you're gonna get sometimes immediate response. Like I said, I do
Right.
want some
It
transparency
sounds
there.
like
that
maybe
it
you
is-
usually would not get immediate
Right.
response.
And
so-
and that's why I'm most interested in the real time monitoring, the surveillance piece of it, because I on my own, I voluntarily patrolled our neighborhood one night at 2:30 in the morning, just to get a feel for it. And I can tell you, I was the only person other than our, and I ran by them but 2 or 3 times doing the same thing, and they finally stopped me and like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, hey, Mayor. I'm just out getting a feel for what this is like. My point being, if they're looking at that monitor and they see a vehicle, any vehicle come in, not that it's, it may be one of us coming in from the airport, but there aren't very many of those
At 3
vehicles
a.m.
entering the neighborhood at 3:00 in the morning. So you can mosey on over that direction and see what's going on and be relatively confident that you and that vehicle are probably the only two moving around the neighborhood.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thanks for sharing the
And
insights.
I would think our officers have a pretty good idea of which vehicles are Rollingwood vehicles, especially if you have the Rollingwood sticker on your
Yeah,
car.
well, you also learn like back, I mean,
On your
obviously it's
windshield.
been a while since, when I used to patrol at night, you know who the paper guy was, you know who
Right.
I mean,
You
it
know
was,
who's out
The
there.
cra-
that's it,
the crazy mayor out driving around. Yeah.
driving around. Well, your license plate is probably marked now, but.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for Chief? All right. Thank you for taking the time and doing that research, Chief.
I've heard good things about it.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Happy to take a motion.
I move approval of consent items.
You have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Mr. Shell. All those in favor, back up,
Can I-
members.
Can we pull out number 9?
Yeah, number 9 has been removed from the consent agenda. Does the motion still stand for agenda
Yes.
items 5 through 8? And the second? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Now moving to agenda item number 9 that was removed from the consent agenda. Consideration of possible action on approval of the Water Conservation and Drought Contingency Plan. I will let Alan open this one up and then recognize Sarah for discussion.
So good evening, Mayor and Council. So this item here is a kind of a follow-up to, so it's a follow-up to a previous item we had where the mayor was authorized to approve the drought contingency plan and the water conservation plan for submittal to the LCRA as part of our raw water application. So those were reviewed. Mayor Pro Tem Hudson, obviously you reviewed as well. We're comfortable with that. It was submitted to the LCRA. They came back and said, great, you have a plan. Where's the resolution that accompanies it? Just a motion saying the mayor is allowed to adopt one wasn't sufficient for their standards. So this is coming back to clean it up and it's the one that you have already seen previously.
Which is kind of offensive to me, but whatever.
Yeah, they wanted to see a formal document where council formally accepted it.
So it's literally the thing that you had already reviewed, but they wanted it in this format.
Oh, there's still a lot of stuff that's not right. Some of which is, like grammatical or just presentation doesn't look very good. But there's a few things that, like, if we are submitting this, committing to complying with these plans, like the watering schedule that's in the plan doesn't match what's in our code. There are some things that just, that don't match up.
Okay. Well, and my apologies. This was the draft that I thought that you had reviewed after the last time when we went through this. So if there's still changes to be made, I'm fine with it. I thought that this was the final version. We were really just doing this to put it in the right format for LCRA.
Well, there's just some things in here that I think are not clear, and if it's something that we are supposed to be committing to the LCRA, it seems like we should have them correct.
We can bring it back next. You want to bring it back next? We can bring it back next month and work
Okay.
with you again on this.
Okay.
Okay. We're taking no action on agenda item number 9. We will punt that to next month and move on to the regular agenda. Agenda item number 10, discussion and possible action on a resolution thanking outgoing board and commission members for their service to the city of Rollingwood, Texas. This is Ms. Brown's agenda item. I think it's a great agenda item. Recognize Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This agenda item is a simple resolution that allows us to honor those who have served on various boards and commissions of the city, and they've now either their term has expired or if they've not been reappointed. And I wanted to take formal action. We thank our outgoing council members, and I think it's also appropriate to thank and recognize the service of our outgoing board and commission members. So I would move approval of resolution 2026-01-21-07, honoring outgoing council, board and commission members Brian Nash, Emily Doran, Colin Harvey, and David Smith.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson. I'll just echo that, though we don't always agree in the community. It is always great to have volunteers who are willing to put forth their time and efforts on behalf of all of the citizens of Rollingwood, and I know that everyone appreciates it. So if there's not further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council. Moving on to agenda item number 11, update discussion and possible action to create a separate dedicated dog off-leash area in Rollingwood Park, including a recommendation from the Park Commission. I believe this is Mr. Glasheen's item. I'll recognize Mr. Glasheen.
Okay, and I don't. You know, I'm gonna say where I think we are on the process, but I don't wanna speak for the Park Commission or, necessarily, so I'm happy to hear from them, and give them an opportunity to give us an update. But I did want to make some remarks in general about the process and where we are and where we're headed with it. I do appreciate Councilmember Brown's comments at our last meeting about how we need to have a very slow, thoughtful, deliberative process that's very inclusive of the community, and I certainly agree with that. And I think that, we all kind of know the history of how we got to this point, but we started with some initiative out of the Park Commission. I think when I first got elected, the Park Commission's role was a little unclear, and there wasn't any real funding for anything the Park Commission ever wanted to do. And one of the things I tried to help do is refocus our understanding of what the Park Commission's role is, and we amended the Park Commission ordinance and talked about how their principal function, as far as I understood it, is to prioritize capital improvement projects in the park, which I think is a great role for them. And I think they do a good job of it and have been doing a great job of it. With that, they went off and worked on some parking lot improvements and tree planting project, which I thought was great work. And I was excited about moving forward with that. And at the same time, I brought up the sprinkler system at the park because it's a huge problem, and I've been struggling with the quality of the turf grass out there and working with Izzy. And finally, we all reached the conclusion that our, almost 50-year-old sprinkler system, however old it is, just needs to be replaced. And so that then triggered a discussion of let's create a separate dog park again, which a lot of folks, including Jeff Marks, really pushed that question. And I think there was consensus at the time in the community. It was good timing because, I think it was a time when the issue had been hung around long enough, and we were at a point where we could all consider that and talk about it and try to reach some agreement on it. And I think there's, still is and a good consensus to move forward with that. But what's happened is we've gone through this process over the time. Of course, we've got nothing done on any of those things, not much yet. But there was good, planning work on the parking lot and tree issue. And but the scope of all of it has grown. Now we've got a lot of stuff going on, and for example, I think that we initially authorized the park commission to spend some money with a landscape architect to plan the parking lot, and then council, I believe, we have never executed on this, but we had some discussion where I think there was consensus by council to hire someone to design a sprinkler system so that we could go bid it, because you can't get bids, that are apples to apples without a plan. And now we have this separate dog park issue, and as I understand it, there's a working group on the park commission of 3 people who are kind of studying the issue to make recommendations. But one of the things I've heard kind of, secondhand, and we can hear from park commission members tonight, but was that there was an idea of hiring a landscape architect to sort of design the options of the 0.4 and 0.6 acre dog park to see kind of what they'd look like on an alternative basis for people to compare and study. And so we've got various design issues going on. One of the problems I've learned of in terms of trying to get anything done on the park over the few years I've been doing this on council is that you've got several different, I'll call it maybe political subdivisions or parts of our, community and Rollingwood government, all with overlapping responsibilities in ways, because especially when we're talking about funding, because we never really had funding, and now, RCDC, the Rollingwood Community Development Corporation, does have about $1 million by now, and I think there's pretty good consensus that we could use that money to get these projects done. And yet, when we talk about a project like this, or any one of these projects, or making them one big project, however we do it, we have to go through the whole park commission process, which is great. I don't have any problem with that. I think it's a valuable process, and I think park commission does a good job. But then we have also got to go through the RCDC, and they may have different questions and concerns. I can give you just an example. I know in the parking lot discussion, I was at the park commission meeting when they were, basically, I'm not sure how whether it got voted out or what, but it seemed like they had settled on the idea that they wanted this plastic grid that's laid down and filled with gravel to get permeability in the parking lot area, and had some cost estimates and had a presentation from the manufacturer's rep of the product, and we're enthusiastic about it. And I don't know if it ever came out as an official recommendation or not, but I could tell sitting there listening, my question's gonna be, well, and I did ask the question, have we got a bid for what it would cost to put asphalt on there, without having to dig out what's there, put in this plastic thing, put in rock, and you can't make a decision like that without a cost estimate of the alternatives, so you can make a value engineering decision about what's the appropriate, choice in that situation. And, I could tell just sitting there thinking is like, okay, that's going to go over to RCDC, and RCDC does have a role in this other than to just write checks, which, they've reminded me of. And when RCDC started raising questions, that's where a lot of it came from, was, some of that came from Colin. And, my initial reaction was just to be kind of annoyed that, what are you asking about the park for? We're just asking you to fund it. That doesn't mean you're going to, he was advocating for the separate dog park. And I'm like, well, that's not the RCDC's role. But, he's like, well, what is our role then? And I'm like, okay, fair point. And also, I think part of the RCDC's role in that regard is if they are going to approve funds, that it be done in a fiscally responsible way, and that it be done in a way that is, good stewards of the money that they're spending. And if they're going to spend it, they're going to have questions about the design process or the alternatives. Did you get a bid for this? Did you get a bid for that? So I can see this process being sort of problematic because we've got to go through parks, we've got to go through RCDC, and then it's got to go through council. And we're going to have the same sort of things. We're going to start tearing it apart again when it gets here. And so when you have three sequential groups, basically picking apart not just the final result, but even the process. Who is the landscape architect going to be? What's the scope of work? All of that. And I've been trying to think of a way to make that process work better. And I've got a suggestion. It's just a suggestion for discussion, of course. But, one of the other problems that led me to think about this was that if Park Commission's going out and getting bids on stuff, well, they're not, it's kind of awkward because they're like, well, we're not actually authorized to spend any money and we can't do anything without, council approval and RCDC approval, but give us a bid. And you can wear out contractors with that sort of approach, and they won't want to deal with you. I mean, a lot of them don't like dealing with cities anyway for that sort of reason. But it's also, you could end up with, what are you going to have? Both parks and RCDC and then council is all going out and trying to get bids on the same stuff. And it's just a terrible process. And I think one way that my suggestion for how we might consider streamlining it, and this came up when we did our joint meeting with parks and RCDC, or maybe it was just RCDC, was the idea that like we create a working group where we maybe get one or two people from parks, from RCDC, and from council as a working group. If it's just like one or two from each of those groups, it wouldn't trigger, quorum requirements necessarily, and it wouldn't really bypass or replace or overrule the process of, that's going on now, where Parks is going to have their, input, their study, their work groups, their recommendations, but it kind of creates, I think, more of a liaison between the three different bodies so that as we move forward, we do things sort of together. Like, for example, I think particularly when it comes to what I'll call execution of the project, which starts with, engaging design professionals and having the scope of design professional work done. And I think that if we just let, parks try to do all of that without input from the other groups, then, RCDC won't be as invested in it, and the city council won't be as invested in the proposed solutions. And so I think if we work together more with a working group, and because another concern I have about working with design professionals is with three different groups, who's going to talk to the design professionals? Are you going to have people from council calling them, people from RCDC calling them, parks calling them? Are we going to all be tugging at their ear and bugging them and getting in front of them? I mean, it's tempting to do that, but I know I've refrained from it because I know it's a bad process. But I think if you have a working group that controls that process a little bit and filters the communication from parks, RCDC, and council, kind of to not wear them out and to make sure we're kind of more all on the same page. And I think it would be helpful. And, then likewise, when it comes further along the execution of getting bids, I know a lot of that's really an administrative function for the city manager and the mayor to do that stuff, but also I know Rollingwood traditionally council sort of helps with some administrative stuff because we don't want to overburden our administration, and we have lots of people who are willing to kind of help. But at the same time, I think it's important that we keep that process of like getting bids and awarding contracts. You know, administration needs to be very much involved in that and might even want to be part of this working group if we create it, so that we have some discipline in the process of communicating with professionals and with potential contractors. So that's my suggestion. That's my understanding of the issues right now. And glad to hear what anyone else has to think or say about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glasheen. Council, any other comments?
Melissa?
I'll get to the,
Oh.
I wanted to give council any other opportunity to make comments, opening comments on the agenda item. All
I
right,
would like to hear from Park Commission.
hearing none, we will move to public comment and step right up.
Hi, Melissa Moore, Parks Commission Chair. I totally agree that it would be really great if we just had one meeting with 6 people and we all decided and we got to fund it and have the whole community agree on it. Unfortunately, that's not how I understand the process to work. And so my understanding of the process is that ideas basically come to Parks Commission and that we should be vetting them. And that includes going and at least getting ballpark figures about how much something would cost. Because in our discussions, in our Parks Commission meetings, one of the things we think about is a budget. Since we don't really have any money, we know we're gonna have to go ask for it or raise it from either RCDC council or the public. So I agree, be great to have a really streamlined process. I will say that we did just complete 2 projects pretty successfully by going through Parks Commission first, then asking RCDC to fund it, and then having council. And we did, throughout that process, come in and check in with y'all and say, here's where we are in the process. I will say this next project, or these next 2 projects that we're talking about, are a little bit bigger and a little bit more complex and have a little more emotional baggage in the community than the previous 2 projects. So knowing that, we have slowed down the process, but we've made great progress with our, as far as the parking lot, we have an amazing design. Kurt Arnett, who's here right now, presented it at our Parks meeting just last week. I think in general, the Parks Commission members, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, but more fully, he had a more, laid out. And we really felt like we were very close to, if we had, if we didn't have this other off-leash area concern, we probably would have made a recommendation saying we'd like to move more forward with it. But because of the idea of creating an off-leash area, and I think that is that's the item we're on right now. The Parks Commission in general, as we talked about it, we said, well, some of the design specific, like if we were gonna make construction documents to take those out for bid, we would have to make changes if depending on what the off-leash area looks like, ultimately, it might change, a few feet of where some of the parking area may end, begin, where we might have plantings, where we might put a trail. And so we have delayed making a decision about or making a recommendation to council about that parking area. I am happy to get that to you guys, and you can look at it and you can see what it is. It hasn't changed very much from our original sort of sketches of it. But we did at our meeting this week ask, and I know this is the next agenda item, we did ask the landscape architect if he would consider giving us 2 proposals. Let me back up just a second. So we formed a committee of 3 of the Parks Commission members to go and do research about an off-leash area and come back to the Parks Commission and make recommendations. That was at our December meeting. Of course, it's the holidays, et cetera, but they did get together, and their recommendation was twofold. 1, they would like to have legal counsel come to either one of our meetings or meet with the committee to answer some questions specific about what the park deed restrictions might restrict in any sort of design options of an off-leash area, and to make sure that we are in compliance with anything that we do with the current lease with Western Hills Little League, or how it would impact it, and what impact that might have on the timing of putting any of those things into place. They also discussed the pros and cons of doing a survey. We know that there's a long time ago, or not long time ago, 8 years ago or so, a survey that was done by the city. And so we were thinking about, do we need an updated one? We know there's cost involved with that. We also know that it may also create more animosity. And so in our discussions, one of the things that we thought might really be helpful if we did do a survey, or if we just continued to get public input, would be to move forward with the landscape architect that we just used to design the parking area, to help us flesh out 2 different options for an off-leash area. One being a 0.4 acre and one being a 0.6 acre. And knowing, again, that he's already listened to us in terms of what we want for the aesthetic, which would match some of the areas that we just did right now, with some of the things, because he's actually sat in on some of the meetings that we've had about the off-leash area, and we could marry up those 2 things with the idea that we might be able to have some cost savings in doing both projects at the same time. And also the timing of them, if the off-leash area ends up being at the north end of the existing youth fields, that we wouldn't mess up any work that we had done in the new east of the fields and south of the fields parking areas. So that's kind of the update of where.
And so, just so I can help get all the puzzle pieces on the
Yep.
table while you're there, in that process that you just described resulted in a motion at the December 9th meeting to request Kurt Arnett to provide a cost estimate of how much it would cost to get a design for a 0.4 acre and a 0.6 acre dog park. That motion was seconded and carried 5-0. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that is the actual recommendation that's coming before council
Yep.
this evening.
And he'll do that for free. So hopefully you guys would be amenable to having free extra information about a design. And the people, and when you talk about who we might add to that committee that helps us talk to Kurt about what the design might have, we could add 2 council members, 2 RCDC members, and we already have 3 park commission members that have agreed to help with that
And I
design.
appreciate that, and that's really kind of more all I'm trying to get to is more inclusive process that brings in council and RCDC as you go through this process. I think it'll make us all feel better about, that our due diligence has been done, because you guys can't be expected to report every single thing you've done, and I think you've done a great job. I'll say that, and I congratulate you and the park commission on the projects that you did complete. I think it's great. And I particularly appreciate your leadership on Parks Commission. I do. I have a lot of respect for the way you've handled very difficult issues. I wanted to say that, and also you mentioned, hey, it'd be great if we could streamline this process, and I'm, maybe a bit, tongue in cheek, but I'm not looking to streamline the process by creating this more inclusive working group from, including some council and RCDC in the process. It's not to streamline it. It's to make it less redundant, perhaps, and also to just build more confidence across all the groups that have to ultimately bless the thing, that, we're comfortable with the process and the way it's done. And also, some of what we're talking about doing, what you're talking about doing, it's hard to say where do you draw the line between sort of prioritizing, planning, and things. You said it includes getting cost estimates. Good, I can see that, I can understand that, and I think that's probably right. But then it's one of those sort of moving lines. Where do we cross the line from planning to execution? And maybe that's at contracting. I don't know, but I just think that process could be better with more inclusion. And for example, with things like if you come to me at council and say, Parks wants to ask legal counsel a bunch of questions, I, personally would rather you know, council be asking legal counsel questions, and if Parks wants us to ask questions, I think we should, rather than having council show up at Parks, because, you know, I want to hear what's going on, because, and we've got a couple of lawyers up here who are gonna have opinions about things, but also, you know, I mean, I want to make sure Charlie sends the A team, which means Charlie, and from my perspective, it makes a difference. And I think those are legitimate issues and questions. You know, I've got my own opinions, but obviously that should come from the city attorney. And then, you know, things like, I didn't know about the survey from 8 years ago. Because we've looked for surveys for the park for a long time, and we never.
Brooke mentioned it last month. She read off all the results from the comprehensive.
Okay, I don't know how I missed that. It's not. It's older than 8 years.
Well, I mean,
No.
I think it's 2021 or around there, but it's.
But nothing's really changed out there, has
I
it?
don't think that there was a formal survey done with the master park plan, but I
didn't
did think
either.
I did think that we had approved recently a survey, a formal survey of the upper park
Right.
several months ago. Where does that stand?
Yeah.
I think you are.
I think we might be confusing the two terms. The land survey the council directed has been conducted. I believe that Ms. Morrow is referring to a survey of how, like an opinion survey
Oh, God.
of how people would like the park to
I'm
be.
sorry. I'm on development. My
Yeah,
developer
yeah,
brain is
yeah.
running here.
Good to clarify.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Good to clarify.
We're like
I was
talking.
like, what is happening here? Yeah.
So no, the land survey, isn't there? We have it of the upper park.
Yes, so
Oh,
the
yeah.
land survey
Yeah.
has been concluded. It's been filed with the city secretary and is in
How
use.
long ago did we get that done?
Been a couple of months. I
With
don't
the-
remember exactly when it was.
And
But
it's a-
within the last
It
year.
was done within about a month and
Okay.
a half of council
And
directing
so
it.
somebody's got that on CAD files, probably not, you probably don't have CAD.
Yes, so
do you?
we the city have it, and we have it in a format that's usable by landscape architects with better software than we have.
Well,
and
I'd
it's a
love to
PDF.
see a PDF of that survey, if you would even post it on the website. If you don't wanna do that, just email it to, I want one. I'm sure it'd be great to email around a
Yeah,
nice
I'd like to
PDF.
see it too.
We'll get you that.
I don't need CAD file though, please.
While I have
That
Melissa,
survey is only, we believe that it only covered the area of the parking lot that we were looking at. We didn't do the entire upper
Oh, okay.
parking lot
That'd
for the
be helpful.
contours, yeah.
Anyway,
while I have Melissa there, I see an opportunity to kill two birds in one stone, because I do think there's some overlap between agenda item number 11 and agenda item number 12. Agenda item number 12 is Mr. Glasheen's also. I'm going to pull up agenda item number 12 and put it before council. Update, discussion, and possible action on parking lot and park entrance improvements in Rollingwood Park. I don't anticipate that there's action to be taken on this, but it does seem to overlap with the discussions that you're having with us now. So I will recognize Mr. Glasheen and then come back to Melissa.
thanks, and really, I just put that on there as a continuing item so that we could make sure that if Melissa had anything to move forward, we could have it on the agenda, and we could actually deal with it. And also just to give an opportunity to let us know where we're at on it, but I think I know where we're at, but go.
And I
go
think you
ahead.
covered it, but
I
just,
did.
yeah, just to
Basically, we
restate.
have a great plan,
Yeah,
but we weren't ready to recommend it because if it gets impacted by where the dog park is, we didn't want to say, this is what our plan is.
but I'd love to join a working group with you, I mean, because that way it saves you the trouble of like, you could, to us, and then I have, okay, I got all these questions like this, you know, the asphalt alternative, for example. So it would shortcut the process, because I hate to have you guys go through everything, come here, we raise a bunch of questions, it goes back to you, I mean, I think it'll help.
And specific to that, pretty much the Parks Commission settled on a grid that is permeable, and not asphalt for many reasons, but I won't go into them now. We can talk about it in the small group.
Sure, and I understand that regardless of cost, that you guys may prefer the grid, which is fine, and there may be great arguments for it. My only issue is having a cost estimate comparison of one to the other, because if we're gonna get all the wonderful benefits of the grid, I wanna know a cost benefit analysis. I need to analyze that, you know. Personally, if I'm gonna vote on it, I want that information, you know, so anyway, maybe I can help.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions for Melissa? Any other comments from,
I did want to make
Yes.
one more. In the packet, so we very specifically did not, from the Parks Commission, everything in the packet under that did not come from Parks Commission. That came from Councilmember Glasheen, and it came from Alex Robinette. So we didn't propose something, so I want to make sure on the record that no one thinks that either of those was a proposal coming from Parks Commission. It has a lot of, all of them have ideas that we're considering and will incorporate into the final plan.
so the only recommendation currently before council is to request Kurt to give us a cost estimate on how
Yeah.
much it would cost to do the design on the point 4 and the point 6.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, that's where I have a question. Is that a request to the council to approve, Kurt? I thought Parks,
I'm interpreting it that way, like you would give us direction, like go forth and seek this input as the park commission is recommending.
the
It was
way
checking in with you guys to see, are we headed in the right direction? Or do you think y'all wouldn't support looking at that?
well, I support looking at it, and I appreciate, you know, the efforts you guys are making on it, and I also appreciate you checking in, you know. I think it's great to have communication about it.
So if we're considering action at this point, the action is give feedback to the Parks Commission on whether to proceed in getting a cost estimate for the two different options.
That is correct.
Okay.
And it
I'm
seems like
just
since Kurt,
clarifying what we're
yeah.
being asked to do.
and since Kurt is in the audience, it seems like it's going to be pretty efficient in terms of conveying that request to him.
Yes.
So,
And as to process, I would like us to think about, you know, this, whatever the work committee is. I think that's probably a good idea, but I would like for those meetings, let's not say the Open Meetings Act applies, but let's say we'll post them as if it did, and the community can attend, and I think that will give additional, an additional opportunity for people to get their ideas before others, for others to hear those ideas, for the Park Commission and RCDC to hear the input of the community. And so I would just suggest that if we are gonna go down the avenue of having a select committee, that we make sure everybody, those meetings get posted and everybody can attend. And
yeah, and not the way we have at least seen it sometimes in the past, and notwithstanding Melissa's offer for Kurt to do free work. I have seen it in the past. We've done it where a scope of work includes, you know, 2-3 work sessions with selected members of the community that would include kind of that work group that you're describing, but there would be some sort of compensation for that time being offered by the
Right.
design
For sure.
professional. So,
And
which I think would be reasonable. We don't need to
exactly,
expect him to
Build that in.
exactly.
do it
We
all
did-
free. I like some of it for free, but it should be.
No, just the estimate is for.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Okay, perfect.
We're
So-
not paying
so
for estimates.
in my mind, his estimate would be coming back like, this is what the scope would look like to come up with this
Yeah.
plan, and here's what it would cost.
And I appreciate you kind of outlining the typical scope of what you might expect that process to include, because I would like to talk about the idea of trying to, you know, get a scope of all of this stuff at once if we could, and, you know, contract it all at once, because, you know, you're talking about the fields and the dirt work in the parking lot, it's all overlapping contractors.
And the trees.
And sprinklers and trees. I want to do the whole thing, you know, because we've got the budget for it. It just makes sense if we can, you know, get through the process.
Okay.
So.
Hmm? Yeah, that's true. It can be phased if we need to see how the budget looks, and
Phasing is spoken like a.
Duke is in the building. Just a short version of this is that. It's so loud when I do this. Yeah, we were, my observation is we're just lacking the project manager who's herding all the cats on all this stuff, and I think everything we talked about is a good solution of that. but we really just need a list of all the things that are, all the moving parts, start whittling down. And I'm gonna just use this to point out as an example, and I'm making a bunch of assumptions here, and nobody come back and say decisions were made, because they're not. But a lot of these moving pieces involve removing the parking from the northern part of the parking lot. We could close a switch on that pretty quickly. Is that something we want to do? If that's something we want to do, we have to think about the Little League, talk about, make sure the new plans have enough parking places. And then, do we really want to do that? Do we not want to do that? Because if we don't want to do that, then a bunch of stuff we're talking about doesn't matter. So that's just an example of where we can collectively look at, if we had the big picture, we could look at all the pieces, see which switches we can close and make the problem smaller, which is just project management 101. I'm not doing anything novel here. So if that comes out of this working group, great. But we're just gonna spin wheels here if we don't do something like that soon. And I also just, it's not on the agenda, but like, we got another big project we need to get moving on that's, has more significance, frankly, to this community than this. Not on the
Let's
agenda, so I'm
add
not gonna
that to
talk
next
about it.
month's agenda,
Yeah, it's
please.
coming.
As
Yeah,
requested,
it's
it's
coming.
just been requested.
Not on the agenda tonight.
What is it?
The city.
City Hall.
Oh, City Hall.
I didn't say
Okay.
that. That might be one of them.
We can say
Because I
that.
can't help myself, so in our great landscape, or design for our parking, we will have, the parking that's designed will have more parking spaces than exist in the north,
Yeah.
normal, and now, right now.
I think it's good. That's an example of there might be, that's the perfect thing where there might be people on council that may have some questions that haven't been thought of, because that's above the scope of what the park commission thinks about. And so that's the second part I was gonna bring up, is that whatever we do, just my observation from being liaison to one meeting of the park commission is, I think we need to bring smaller chunks sooner back to council of just, here's what we're thinking, just so we can give direction or help out on some of the stuff. Like, let's assume Kevin's opinion's correct, that he'd rather have city council talking to the lawyers about what we legally can or can't do. I'd rather us have that discussion before y'all go do a bunch of work or not and get frustrated, whatever the outcome is. So it doesn't have to be fully done to bring it to us and go, this is what we're thinking.
We just need to have a running agenda item every month for this whole park project, and let's get together, and then we can do the other working group together at park commission meetings and make it part of the park commission meeting, and I'll show up for that part. And otherwise, I haven't wanted to go in and try to be too actively engaged, even though I'm liaison to the park commission, because I didn't want to, I've been accused of taking over too much stuff and talking too much. So I was trying to be cool and leave y'all alone a little bit. But I think if I had a more official role on a subcommittee working group, it would work better. I could participate in that part, and otherwise kind of stay out of it. But I love what that you said, and I didn't mean to interrupt if you're not done. But
Carry on.
But I wanted to say I appreciate what you said about project manager a lot, because you guys know, because I talk about it a lot, that I'm a developer, and I work every single day. I spend a lot of time with my project manager. I got a full-time project manager who just is so good and makes my life so much better, and he deals with the architects and the contractors, and he does the monthly contractor meetings to review their pay applications, and he works with the owner's rep architect on site, and he just we're putting in public water supply system at a subdivision out of Fredericksburg, and building a hotel, and there's just no way I could do that without a project manager. And I think that's one of the things we should talk about at the point that we get there is, engaging a project manager for this deal, because man, they just save you money, but they also, it solves so many problems of we don't have really enough administration, and we've got Parks Commission's role and everyone else's role, but if we all kind of have a project manager that is the point person, it just helps define, it helps keep the project on track. The project manager can filter a lot of stuff, so.
Right, I'm not closing down opportunity for comment from the audience, but it seemed like we might have been on the verge of a motion there by Ms. Brown. Were we?
Well, I think
Did I
we
misread
do need to
that?
hear from the public before we.
And I'm happy to take a motion to keep it moving, and then I'll come back to any comments.
Motion that we approve the Park Commission's request to get an estimate for additional services from the landscape architect.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Ms. Brown. We'll now discuss that, and I'll first recognize anyone from council who wants to discuss further. Not hearing any, happy to take further comment. Come on up.
Don Hudson, 4902
We're not
Rollingwood Drive.
gonna let you leave Rollingwood.
It's not easy, let me tell you. I just wanted to say that in my experience, however you come up with a preliminary design is the first step. And a larger group does not necessarily come up with a better preliminary design. And a preliminary design can be, it's not trying to be, this is the final, you know, everybody can just like it or go away. It's something you can look at and say, it's this. You can see that we're not losing parking spaces on the north end. We're gaining another row in the main area. It actually gives you something to work from. And I think with 7 people in a group, I think it would be a slower, more cumbersome process. To me, the first thing you do is you do like the Park Commission has done, which is to engage a designer and come up with a very thoughtful, pretty comprehensive plan, and there it is. And that's what can be worked over and chewed up and edited. And in the Park Commission meeting, when we started talking about the off-leash area and how the interface with the parking lot, all of a sudden you're dealing with, for example, the off-leash area will have probably some water spigots. Dogs like water. It'll have some irrigation for the plantings that will go into it. Well, all that has to be, you can't be burrowing in the new parking lot to get to the off-leash area. Doing them together makes sense. So I just want to say that I think as this project has gone forward, the Park Commission, of which I'm a member, has done an excellent job. So thank you.
Great, thank you, and thanks for your service. Alex?
Alex Robinette, 2500 Hatley. I totally agree on what you're saying about having a project manager, you two. I've been saying that for a long time. So I would like to have some resolution maybe tonight that you all maybe get that going, because this process has been pretty inefficient. Back in March, I was asked to look at the parking lot, which I did. We had plans, and then in July, Kurt was hired, and by October, he was presenting plans. So it wasn't just last week. They've been hardlined and ready to look at. And so I'm a little disappointed that you all have not seen these at all, hadn't had a chance to weigh in on any aspect of it. To me, that's incredibly inefficient. And it was always designed in mind that other things could happen in the park. We always knew that something different might happen with the athletic fields. There might be a dedicated dog park off-leash area. So that parking lot as is pretty good to go. And it wouldn't, like, everything else can work around it. And so I don't know how much time you guys want to spend, whatever you can do to streamline the process, given the constraints I was given early on about getting this parking lot done. I would love to see some resolution and not just keep talking about it month after month. So thanks.
Great, no, fair, good comments. I want to, first of all, express appreciation to Mr. Arnett for being here. Thank you. And I don't want to put you on the hot seat, but I also don't want to not give you an opportunity to speak. So I'll recognize Duke first, but if you want to say something, please do. And if you want to just wave at the dais and say, look forward to talking to you next time. So anyway, that's your notice. You can go either way, totally respectful, but we do appreciate you taking the time to be here. And with that, I'll recognize.
He loves to talk.
Okay. He may have met his match tonight. So.
No.
Duke, you're recognized.
Yeah, Duke Garwood, 5 Rockaway Cove. I think that's right. Well, I sort of agree with Alex about the parking lot. You know, parking's a premium, and I think it's absolutely in the right place. And if you move forward and it was an existing element, it's just part of the design process that's one of the programmatic issues that this awesome landscape architect would have to deal with. I came to talk about something else, but I'm not gonna do that because I don't even think it's pertinent in the sense that it's not in your packet and so forth. But hey, project manager or, a committee of collected people, and Don, I know you said 7. Hey, it could be 1 or 20, it doesn't matter. But it's some group that is accountable and would help define what the program, those priorities, the hierarchy of those things, and it would be a roadmap by which this gentleman would provide a design. And again, the design process, again, I'm speaking because we're sort of kindred professionals, he being a landscape architect, me being an architect, but the design process takes care of, when do we go from concept to execution, And again, the design process is really, in my world, one of consensus building. I know I'm gonna step on Jeff's toes because he loves surveys, but man, I'm tired of surveys. I've heard so much input that I think we have a great sense of what those issues are, and I think collectively, out of that committee, there might be a few more. There might be some that are discarded, but still, there'll be a list of priorities. They'll be prioritized, and he'll do his best to, make sure that we hit all the top ones 100%. And as we go down the line and have to make a few compromises, we do that in the right places. So, I don't know what I was trying to.
It's always sage advice, though, and we
Well-
do appreciate you, Duke.
Well, but again, the design process, nobody's kind of discussed it, but hey, you set a program, you set your goals, he goes about trying to meet those. Now, that program is inclusive as much as possible and so forth. And that committee and collectively, any organization or group that looks at it, they're gonna be able to judge his work by how well did he check all those boxes.
Okay,
In the
great.
discussion.
Thank you, Duke.
And I was gonna say, my wife says, we don't care about the dog park, because she wouldn't dare bring her sweet dog up to be eaten by all those other big dogs. Right?
Show the camera.
Yeah.
She'd get bullied. She looks too sweet.
She'll appreciate it.
They're too sweet for the dog.
Too sweet.
Thank you, Duke.
It's not a street dog.
Appreciate it.
Laurie Mills, Park Commission and 2610 Rollingwood Drive. I totally agree with the project manager. I think we definitely need one. My question to you would be, is that a volunteer? Is that someone on staff? Who is that person that y'all would like to see manage this? It is a lot of moving pieces that have been outlined by Alex over the past few months. My other comment is that I definitely think we could go ahead with the parking lot, moving forward with it, moving forward with consensus with RCDC and council separate from the off-leash area. I think it can be done. But my main comment is I'd love to know who y'all think this project manager is.
And let me jump in there. I share that question, and I think I would ask the same question of those who are kind of immersed in the working groups on this. I'll share this anecdote and remind council, we did a project manager with our water CIP and our repaving projects, and that was Robert Dial, who you've all met and we hired over a year ago now. That was a great experience. And just as a reminder for council, how we did that was he was like an owner rep. We put him on retainer with the city, and he was the project manager for all of those. He worked closely with Izzy on a daily basis. He worked closely with the engineers on a daily basis, and he was the project manager for that CIP, and is in the process of wrapping up that project now. So we do have some experience in doing a project manager, and I think the way in which we did it for that could be modeled for this. So where we would find, I don't know who that individual is. I would like to have some input as to who that individual is. Robert doesn't do, these sorts of projects, but that type of individual that you put on a monthly retainer and they're your owner rep, like that's how I think that could work. That's how I would like to see it from from staff and my perspective.
And what would be the timing on that? We've already gotten somewhat down the road on a few things, so it's probably better someone came in sooner than later.
Yeah, I would like input on the way we did it for that is, the project was designed and engineered. It was, we bid it out, and kind of in that time frame was when we hired Robert to be
Can
a
I
project
jump in
manager.
on that? I'm sorry.
Yes,
You go ahead.
either.
I was gonna say, Robert came in and I learned a lot from talking to Robert.
Yeah, you
but-
spent a lot of time in the yard, in your front yard with Robert. So.
that too. But yeah, he wasn't involved in the actual design of it.
Correct.
And figuring out all the pieces that we're talking about. It's a good model if we can find. I don't
Yeah,
know
but
who
I'm
this person
thinking-
is.
So,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I just want to jump in and respond to you and to the mayor because, I have a lot of experience working with project managers, and I think it's just I'm very excited that everybody's enthusiastic about the idea. I think the time to do it, to answer your question, is now. In my project management, I find that the project manager works with the design professionals very, very well. Like when I hired architects to build this hotel in Fredericksburg, I got 3 architectural bids, one for $1 million, one for $1.5 million, one for $2 million. And I had no idea, even though I've done a lot of projects, I still don't know what that architectural contract should look like, how they should phase the work, scope it, and what's fair, and how they load, the design development phase versus the CD construction drawings and all that. And that guy took care of all of that for me, and he also helps with VE at that point, because they can say, well, we also need to look at these cost alternatives. So I think the answer is now, and I think the way we find one is that we let our little working group do that as their first order of business, is to find one. I wouldn't recommend my project manager because I don't want to have to hear about it if y'all hated him, but I think he knows a bunch of people that do the same thing, because this is what he's done full-time in Austin for 10 or 15 years, and he could recommend a couple of names that the working group could talk to, and we could pick one. And I think engage them early, and we just have to figure out a fee structure. Monthly retainers are good, but also I think having benchmarks in there, and so much when the parking lot gets done, okay, for example, because you want to incentivize them to get it finished too. But I think we could sure do that.
So that sounds like what we're tasked to do, to go find the project manager.
I think the working group that is going to involve both RCDC, somebody from council, I think we do that at Parks Commission meeting, but we come and participate in that. That'd be on our agenda too, because I want to have him be involved in that and see that it happens.
And we're staff, and we're happy to call around, and that's what we did with
I
Robert.
just don't want us to go down a path and you're like, well, that isn't the person.
Well,
you know
I'd
what I mean?
love
Like,
it
I
if the
feel like
mayor,
we're just adding all these things to
if
the
the mayor
I-
wants to and Alan want to take the lead on that, I certainly love that. I'm just
I just don't know who
hesitant
to
dump
call.
work
Like
on you guys.
with the CIP and the streets, it was pretty straightforward. Izzy called all of his old. He called his old municipality and the contractors and said, "Hey, who's a good project manager?" And we interviewed 2 or 3 and then found one. So I don't know who to call.
You could call Ross, my
yeah,
guy.
but we could do something.
Yeah, hang on a second. We're getting a little. There's 2 parts. I think.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
What's
go ahead.
it? What is it?
We're not talking about buildings. We're still talking about site work. So
Right.
there is an overlap.
Right.
I don't know that we need to get building.
I agree, and that's why I think Ross isn't appropriate for it, but he would know people that would be appropriate for it. Like he deals with all these commercial landscape contractors all the time on multifamily projects. He's built like 20 apartments and complexes in Austin. So he'd know who would be good for
Mr.
this.
Shell.
So we're out over our skis here a little bit. I think the first act for the working group, if we want to create a working group, which I think everybody would love a motion around that.
You have we are debating a motion currently, so you have a motion in front of you, but we'll come back to
It's a
it.
different one. So I'll just finish this thought. Like, I think the first thing to do of that working group is identify what's needed, because there are two different things going on. There's requirements gathering, which is a different skill set in navigating our government than it is making sure that everything's being put in the proper place and laid down properly. We might be able to find somebody we can pay for that, but that's gonna take longer than a reasonable set of
That's
people
what I'm
in our
thinking
community to
is
sit down
this
and talk,
is
which I think is what
pushing it
Kevin is saying.
What do you mean by requirements
Further
gathering?
back.
I didn't.
Well, like,
We
we've
don't
got,
have a design yet for
Well,
a project manager to execute.
Well, the project man,
We-
we do have a design.
We-
We have a
got-
parking lot design.
It's-
okay.
Yeah.
If we want to create this group, the first thing that group is going to do, unless we're going to tell them, is come back and say what the group is going to do. They figure that out. We can debate it all night here, and it's kind of a waste of time in my
Well, I
opinion.
think first thing they do is find a project manager and recommend him, or have them, as with it, we ask Mayor and Alan to do it, which I think is a great solution if they don't mind doing it.
Don't
Mr.
they
Mayor?
first have to
Yes, ma'am.
decide what our
go ahead.
project is?
Well, the first project's the parking lot, but we have these other projects that we want to develop through design and then execution. And I don't think it hurts for the project manager to be involved at the design process. I think it's beneficial.
Well, we're still waiting
Well,
for
if
the
it gets
Parks Commission to
approved.
give us their recommendations from their
Exactly.
working group.
Right.
But they have a
And we don't-
parking lot already.
I think
Go
we
ahead.
need to, I'm getting confused about this project manager step, you know, and I would like some clarity and maybe have that clarity come back to us at the next meeting. Because we've talked about asking Kurt to give, approving what, the only proposal from Parks that's in front of us is to ask Kurt to give us a cost estimate on 2 different designs.
Yes.
And then we've talked about forming some kind of working group to help in the design process. And we've talked about a project manager. And so I think if we just take the time to walk through those steps one by one and say, what are we gonna do here? Do we want Parks to come back with a recommendation on those 3 steps next time? That sounds logical to me, and it keeps it going, and it gives us some time to think about how would, have Parks also come back with a recommendation on what they see this working group doing.
Yes.
That's,
And I go ahead.
There is confusion on if we have a parking lot design, but based on the working group idea, are we bringing it to you before then, or creating the working group to go through that idea before we bring it to council? So there's things that are already ready to share, but to Councilmember Glasheen's point, RCDC needs buy-in and council.
And I personally would encourage
and
everybody to.
here at council, we don't have those proposals before
Right.
us for action tonight.
And that's what, the other thing is I was saying was that I really encourage everybody to share information early and often, and I agree with Alex's frustration that we haven't seen it yet, and that I know it's a long, slow process, and we all get frustrated with how slow it is, and then we all get reminded by somebody that
What
it's
I
supposed
think-
to be slow, but
I think we've gotten some mixed messages on whether we bring a fully baked plan to you with costs, or whether we share early and often.
right.
So I think that directive would be much appreciated by the Parks Commission on what you guys prefer. And I know that changes based on the project and different things, so direction from you all on how you wanna see information and when you wanna see it
I think
is
if we had
important.
if we have a monthly agenda item where Parks comes, like you've been doing, and I appreciate that a lot, and we get to talk about it just like we're doing tonight, keeps the ball moving, we have a regular monthly meeting, and we can give you, you can tell us where you're at and what you wanna do, and we can talk about it, and you know, we'll hopefully write the agenda item where we can take action on stuff that's coming up. Like if you want to move forward with the parking lot, say, hey, we'd like to move forward with this. Are y'all ready? And if we have questions, we have questions. If we're ready to move forward, we move forward.
So it would be helpful at our meetings, as our liaisons, if you helped guide us in what's appropriate.
I will do that. I've just been reluctant because I kind of overdid it when I first started with Parks Commission, and so I was trying to be respectful of our separate roles. But that's why I want to have an official role there, so that I can have a section of the meeting where I do participate or give feedback.
So I kind of do think that the working group is the Park Commission with the addition of you already got 2 people from the council which are liaisons.
Right.
So all that's missing is somebody from RCDC.
We should get a liaison from RCDC.
And-
It's a great idea.
And they should be invited. They shouldn't have to go to every meeting and be
I
there for
agree with
everything,
you.
but
That's a
invite
great
everyone
idea.
doing
I
this.
feel like that's a
And then
much
we have-
better, more reasonable use of time and efficiency if everybody is hearing the same
I
thing in
agree.
the same place. I
I agree.
appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want it to get.
Instead of adding more subcommittees.
No, I agree. I think that's smart.
Yeah.
And it solves my concern of that it's a little bit more
Perfect.
involved and inclusive of other groups.
So then maybe in February meeting, we can talk about how and when to engage a project manager, what makes sense financially and for efficiency.
Yes.
Great. Thank y'all.
Hey, thank y'all so much.
Let's, hang on, we're not
So-
done talking about it.
Just to wrap that up, so what I think is gonna happen is at our next meeting, Kurt's gonna come and tell us how much it would cost for us to get 2 ideas on the, off-leash area. And then, we will make a recommendation and ask council to pay for that or RCDC. And we'll try and make sure and we get on those agendas.
If this motion passes, that is how I would anticipate that playing out.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I'll just add to the last part of this. Just so we're clear, we're gonna have, the working group, we're doing this in the Park Commission. It's still coming back to the city council.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
I wanna-
yeah.
No, this isn't for us. This is
Yes,
for
for the-
everybody
for
watching.
the good of the
This is
order.
that
Yes.
We're just having people that are familiar with the areas and understand kind of how their boards, commissions
I'll
work.
call for a vote.
I'm gonna,
I can't hear what's being said. If you
Yeah.
could,
I'm gonna give Kurt an opportunity to wave and or say a few words. His choice. Dealer's choice. Welcome.
I'm
Thanks
Kurt
for being here.
Arnett, and I'm a landscape architect, and I've been working on the parking lot design, and I think you're gonna love it.
Good.
But yeah, I wanted to say something on that, on the layout of the parking lot. I think we've got that down pretty good, and the materials can, price can change, but there were reasons why we went with the pervious materials. The existing trees, protecting those, and also the runoff factor, trying to minimize runoff. So that's what I want to say about that. But the parking lot also, the number of spaces we have could be impacted by what's going on with the dog park and the baseball field. So those kind of go together. At least that end of the parking lot does. So I'd be love to help out with that part of it. And I've been thinking about the 2 schemes in it. I don't know if you want me. I think I could spend probably 10 to 15 hours on that. Charge $150 an hour, so it's about $2,200. So if that saves a month of then I'm for that. So
Okay.
I make a motion that we add to next month's agenda that we retroactively approve that expenditure.
Don't we have a motion?
Yeah, no, we do. We're
Hey.
supposed to vote.
Can we
Excuse me.
we have a motion that we have that we
You
should
have a-
vote on if we don't have any more conversation?
So you do have a motion. Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate it. And I do have something else to say in a moment. I am going to ask for a vote on the motion to approve the Park Commission recommendation. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. There being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Okay, we're moving forward with the proposed Park Commission recommendation to do what you just said. With what you just said at the dais, though, would you like to make another
Yes.
motion for us to go ahead and spend the? Why don't you give me a upper limit of $4,000 or something like that to go ahead and
That's double what he said.
I get it.
Fine, it's an upper
I-
limit.
It's an upper limit, not more than, so that we've got some flexibility in that. If you want to make that motion, we're happy to jumpstart this a little bit and get him going on.
I move that,
But just to be clear, this would be under agenda item
11.
12.
Oh, this
that-
would be, well, no, what he just described is under 11.
Yeah.
I understand that, but now you're talking about a motion to approve funding for, the parking lot and park
No.
entrance improvement.
Parking
no.
lot's
Yeah.
already
Okay.
done.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, this is
Dog park
under
is-
11, possible
Dog
action to create a separate dedicated dog off-leash area. in Rowan.
Well, I would love to do it if our council thinks that it's appropriate to also include funding under agenda item 11.
I mean, it's enough notice to the public that we're gonna have a discussion about it.
Can you speak louder?
Yes.
He thinks it is properly posted to approve a budget item for this.
okay, so I move to authorize the up to $4,000 expenditure for additional landscape architectural services studying alternative dog park proposals.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say
Aye.
no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. That was a very efficient second motion. All right, great job. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mr. Arnett, for being here. And we'll look forward to, and what I was going to say is, we'll talk more with the Park Commission and Melissa about this, but I would envision maybe having you come back as part of that hourly rate that we just approved, maybe having you come back and do a presentation on both of these topics on next month's agenda item, if that's possible. Okay? Well, and we'll talk about it if that doesn't work for your timing, we're flexible, but I'm just kind of laying that out as a possible next step for next month. And then we can have all of that other discussion about project managers and all of that
And
next
I'll,
month as well.
and I'll see you guys at the February 10th Park Commission meeting.
Okay.
Did I get that right?
All right, with that, hearing no other action to be taken on agenda item number 11, we will move off agenda item number 11, moving on to agenda item number 12 that is already before you, council. I don't believe that there's additional action to be taken on 12 unless
Maybe send us the drawings.
we're happy to do that. We'll send you what we have on 12. No other action, hearing no other action.
Just,
Yes.
I guess I can say it's the Park Commission, but I'd like to make sure that it gets included going forward. Like this material you're talking about, we didn't get to see the presentation, but I'd love to see like other recommendations of where we can go look at and see places that have used this. You can inform us of that somehow beforehand. Yeah, yeah. Put that in the agenda for the next Park Commission, and then maybe we can do
Real
some work ahead
world
of time.
examples of where this has been used.
Right, just to
Got it.
we can be more expedient because that's going to be a question that comes up.
All right. Any other items on 12? Hearing none, we will move off of agenda item number 12 onto agenda item number 13. Discussion and possible action to set a date for the spring cleanup event. Alan, do you want to lay this out? And I don't remember the dates that are in front of us.
No, I have it here. So this one is the spring cleanup event that we have every year as part of our contract with the solid waste provider. They provide some roll-off dumpsters for us at no additional cost to the city. There are 2 weekends that we're proposing at basically either side of spring break. The first weekend and the second weekend of spring break, which is March the 14th and 15th, or March the 21st and 22nd. We did reach out to Western Hills Little League, and they said that they would prefer that we'd have that first weekend of spring break on the 14th and 15th. Staff, of course, will defer to whenever you'd like us to have it. So I know that's their preference.
Yeah, I would recommend you do it, council, on March 14th and 15th. Full disclosure, council, there is no right answer. You will not make everyone happy on this agenda item. We never make everyone happy. Whatever weekend you pick, you will hear from the people who think you should have picked the other weekend. So
in
good
that,
luck.
In that vein, can going forward, we just put this in the consent agenda and let Alan pick a date?
Yeah, that's a good, well, I'll remember that for next year. So,
I'm not nearly that bold.
yes. Don't worry, we're still the ones that get the calls, so. Anyway,
Or we could flip.
That's right.
happy to have a motion.
Abstain.
I move that we set the spring cleanup for March 14th and 15th.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie, second by Ms. Hudson. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. There being 5 ayes.
No. So that when somebody calls and complains about the date, I can say, I voted against that date.
All right, fair enough. You've got 4 ayes, 1 nay. Motion carries. Well played, Mr. Bushy.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 14, discussion and possible action regarding appointments to fill vacant position on the Rolling Wood Community Development Corporation. I believe you've got applications in your packet, council. This is your appointment to make, and I will hold the floor open for any motions that you would like to make.
I move that we appoint Fred Hartman to Rolling Wood Community Development Corporation.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie to appoint
Fred Hartman?
Fred Hartman to the RCDC. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a second by Mr. Shell. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council.
I move that we appoint Kathy Casey to the Rolling Wood Community Development
You have
Corporation.
a motion to appoint Kevin Casey by Mr. McDuffie.
Kathy Casey.
Kathy Casey by Mr. McDuffie. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie, a second by Ms. Hudson. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries.
I move that we appoint Arun Natison to the Rolling Wood Community Development Corporation.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie, a second by Ms. Hudson. Further discussion?
Yeah. I like Arun, love to have Arun doing this. Absolutely think he's awesome, but I also think we have had people in the queue longer. And I like, the people that step up and put their application in to be considered. So, that's my only, that's my feedback on this. I love Arun, by the way. I think he's awesome.
Gotcha.
That guy's smart,
And
knows a lot.
I will obviously recognize you for a motion if this one does not pass. Further discussion, council. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
There being 4 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. All right. Is that everything? I think that's it, right? All right. Having no other action to be taken on agenda item number 14, we'll move on to agenda item number 15. Discussion and possible action on installation of valley gutter at the intersection of Vale Street and Bettis Boulevard and other water diversion structures. Council, I've placed this on the agenda for your consideration. If just a quick reminder, this is the intersection that we've talked about some time ago. Council gave me some broad discretion to try to get this done at the time that we had the paving crew in town. We had K-Freeze do a couple of engineering options for your consideration. There was one that was extremely expensive, but there was a one that was a little bit less at $90,000. And the goal was to try to get this project done when Bennett Paving was in town. But because we were trying to accomplish that without, or on an expedited timeline, I wanted to move forward with that if we were able to achieve a consensus among the four corners of that intersection, the homeowners of the four corners of that intersection. If we were able to achieve that consensus among that group as to what the proposed solution should be, then I was willing to move forward with the project and the paving crew that we had when we had them in town, with the dollars that council had given me budget execution authority on. unfortunately, we were not able to achieve that consensus, and I don't lay blame for that. It was an expedited timeline, but that was the situation that we were in, and so I was not willing to press forward with something that everybody didn't necessarily agree with or have time to digest. That said, we do still have an issue in that area with a low spot in the street, and I need direction from council as to how to move forward. If we're going to go with one of the engineered solutions that K-Freeze proposed at the time, do we want to do an extended hydraulic study in that area that at least one of the neighbors would prefer us to do? How do we want to proceed in that area, if at all? So that's why it's back before you, and I'm happy to. I think I see AB here. Welcome, AB. Thanks for being with us from K-Freeze. If we want to hear from AB, he drove, so let's AB come on up. I don't want you to sit in the corner all night without at least giving you your 5 minutes of spotlight. So.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you all, Council. AB Salinas with K-Freeze or Lochner now.
Yeah, sorry, I never forget the new name. I always forget the new name.
Yeah, I guess a little bit of background on this project. We're talking about the intersection of Vale and Bettis, and on Vale, there's what we call, I think, a construction defect. There's an unintentional low point in the roadway. It's something that's been documented for a number of years and was referenced back in the 2002, I think it was a drainage master plan that identified this project and a need for correction for that defect. So with that said, the intention of the roadway and the drainage system is not to use this low point as a diversion or any sort of detention onto another property. The roadway is intended to drain towards the intersection and continue down Bettis. And so this work proposes to correct that defect and address the issues.
And can you just briefly go through, I mean, I know you engineered it, quote unquote, but what did you look at to engineer that solution?
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, on
Yes.
that question, I think we have two designs. So if your question is are you going to both designs or one over the other?
Will you speak to the difference in the two designs? Can you do that to some extent?
I can. And so I think, one of the challenges that we often face with drainage projects is we're trying to find a way to do them as economically as possible. So there's one solution that is localized to one side of the Vale and the addition of a valley gutter on Bettis. And so that preserves basically the pavement condition for the entirety of the intersection, but just kind of corrects that low point. So there's repaving work on Vale only for limited, I don't know if it's 100 feet or so. And then the other option is a full reconstruction of the intersection. And so that would be a much more costly type solution.
Mr. Mayor, my concern about this is I can't read these diagrams and know what I'm looking at. Can we have our engineers write a recommendation to us with pros and cons on these two designs, or if there are other options?
Sure. Yeah, we could do that.
Can
I
we?
mean, I can't.
Or just
I can't.
explain it to us now?
Yeah, and even do a PowerPoint if we need to, but we can, I've got it on my screen, but I'd like to hear the whole explanation here and let us ask questions, and then at the end of that, if we need a written follow-up, we could ask for it, but I think we might be able to get a recommendation from the engineers right now.
And I'll let AB jump in.
The
But
reason I
go
would
ahead.
like more information is that we've got a threat of litigation here, and we need our engineers to make a recommendation to us that this will fix the plan or this does this and this plan does that, so that we can rely on their professional guarantee to us going forward. That's why I would like a written report
Yeah,
and a
no,
recommendation.
that makes sense. And I agree we need to, I'm in the same boat. Like, I want to,
And I can't understand
Yeah.
this just from the
Yeah,
diagrams.
I-
I don't have the
yeah, I definitely
professional
want
background to do
to,
that.
I definitely want to rely on their professional engineering opinion on how to correct it. I will say in non-engineering terms, the solution that is the least expensive in non-engineering terms fills in the hole. And the other solution reworks the entire intersection.
I mean, I get that, but I don't know the difference in the flow of
Sure.
water and the potential
Yeah.
for harm
I understand.
to a homeowner.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to evaluate.
Yeah.
And I can't do that from these diagrams.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well,
And I don't know if you can speak to this, but I know when Robert Dial looked at it, the day he and I looked at it, the way they transitioned that intersection is not the way they transition intersections any longer. Apparently, it's what they did in the '80s, and it's no longer done that way. So you would be in the reconstruction of that intersection, you would basically be milling out that hump, correct?
And it would be more than that because
The hump on Vale,
On Bettis.
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry,
The
yes.
transitions to Vale,
Yes.
yes, correct.
Right. And so with milling work, usually that's limited to the first 1 or 2 inches of asphalt, and then beyond that, we're talking about a full depth reconstruction. So because we're talking about excess of 2 inches, it ends up being a full reconstruction of the intersection
Access of 2 inches of,
of asphalt pavement.
Yeah, I misstated. It would be more than just milling. It's actually excavating further down in the intersection.
Correct.
But yes, we can have a more robust explanation of it.
I have a slightly,
well, I need someone to walk me through, if we're gonna do this tonight, I need someone to walk me through what each diagram does and what the consequence is
would it
for
be
the
helpful
flows
to,
from the property.
would it be helpful to do that on the big screen here so that we can all see what he points, so he can point at
Sure.
things?
Yes. I'm trying to.
I'll
imagine
lend you
it.
my pointer, you know.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You know, I'm a trial lawyer, so I always carry a pointer if you want to borrow it. Just in case.
it's the antenna off my car, dude. Break that off.
And that looks like a stick.
A lot of my stuff can double as a weapon.
Double as a weapon. Yeah, smart.
Are we able to pull that on the screen?
Right,
Are
on
we-
the spot, on the spot.
Okay.
Should've brought a jacket. Show and tell is always fun. It's great. And it's early, it's not even 9 o'clock.
I know, I need a jacket.
I thought of it, I thought it's gonna be cold out here.
Oh, it was hot.
And I would also just point out that this is all on the record, and so as far as like documenting our due diligence and stuff, it's helpful. You don't like it?
I don't like it.
I
We
ain't
need a
scared
written
of.
report.
I
so-
ain't scared of lawsuits.
While we're setting this up, I'm gonna just throw something else out. I'm gonna throw something else out here. I've thought about this a lot, and when we were out with Alan and Bennett Paving the other day, just going through the roads and looking at the punch list items they left to do, the WSB engineers were also with us on that. And so they've helped us out with the roads, and it just kind of occurred to me that Abe can do a great job presenting this to us up here, and we're never gonna understand it because we're not qualified to understand all of that. I'd like to break this log jam because we've got litigation on both sides of this if we do it wrong, possibly. So a thought is if we could get a second opinion from WSB to go out and look at this and give us a proposal for what they would do, just fresh slate, and come back to us, because even with him explaining this tonight, I think it's gonna be enough to get us over it without some detailed explanation and some technical notes we can read and make sense of. So.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea to get just again, I would agree with how you described it as a like a clean slate, like not show them this, just a full second opinion. You do your work. K-Free's already done their work. Then we look at both and see if they come to the same engineering conclusion. My suspicion is that they would probably come to the same engineering conclusion, but it would be nice to have two separate engineers coming to that same conclusion. So I would be supportive of that. Let's circle back to that, though. Let's hear AB's discussion on what K-Freeze or Lochner came up with.
And we're completely comfortable with that, proposal as well. So, starting with this option, this is the valley gutter option, which is basically limiting the scope of work to as little area as possible. And if Nikki, if you can go back to the previous screen, I'd like to just kind of start with.
Her hands are cold.
This is generally the contributing drainage area that's draining towards the intersection. So drainage area 2 that you see on the screen is draining towards Vale, and then we have drainage area 1 and 3, which are traveling down Bettis. And so when we look at this point on the map with the star, that is the low point that we're talking about in the street, and really that's street is intended to flow towards Bettis, and so that's an area that needs to be corrected. Next page. And so our challenge and objective with this solution was to find something that was as small of a scope of work as possible while still addressing the issue. And so this proposes in the blue some asphalt paving and filling in of that low spot to drain towards Bettis. And in the yellow line that you see on the street, that's a proposed valley gutter, which would be concrete and tying into the the two pavements. And then
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes,
The
sir.
yellow line that's got the little arrows on it, is that indicating the flow of water?
it's also indicating, yes, the direction of the flow.
Okay.
And it's going towards Zilker Park. And that's where the valley gutter is proposed. And then in the dashed red lines, we'd be looking at reconstructing those curbs to ensure that they meet minimum city requirements. And
What's that height?
typically it's 6-7 inches. And then
Because basically, if you filled in the hole, you would need to raise the curb to match what you filled in, correct?
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And we're redoing some of this pavement work because we need to tie that slope of this of Vale. We need to tie it back into the concrete valley gutter. Currently, it's a crowned street, and so we need to flatten that road a little bit to tie into the concrete that's proposed in that yellow line.
So in this proposal, the water would flow, all of the water would flow to the valley gutter? Is that what happens to the water? What happens to the water?
It goes to Bettis, yeah, and
It goes to Bettis or it goes to the valley gutter?
well, it goes to the valley gutter, but which is on Bettis, and it will continue down Bettis Boulevard. Now, in a huge storm event, the entirety of the road serves to convey that flow, and so I think
Which
in those
road?
extreme conditions, both roads, any of the roads. So the roadways are the conveyance system, the drainage system for,
I understand that, but
and so
I didn't know if you were talking about one specific road or not. Sorry to interrupt.
no, this is great. And
So what is the resulting flow of water from this design down Bettis?
it would be ultimately the same as in the existing condition.
Well, except that it keeps the water from going around the corner onto Vale and then across Vale outside of the intersection. Right? It keeps the
Right.
water going straight through the intersection instead of curving around and going to the point where the star was on the previous drawing.
Right. And we're trying to stop this water from, cutting that corner, going across this residence,
Right.
and keeping it in the street where it was originally intended to be.
So there'd be a slight, whatever water was previously going over onto Vale and onto the residence would now be going down Bettis. It'd
Would
a
be
slight-
returned. Yes.
And the water coming down Vale to the intersection, where would that go?
Same place.
To Bettis.
To the valley gutter. The valley gutter will hold it and turn it to Bettis.
Well, the valley gutter is pretty minimal in terms of its depth and size. So flow is going to be contained within, let's just say, that half of the street, the entirety of the street.
Which half of the street?
Runoff coming from Vale. A portion of this will be conveyed through the valley gutter and continue along the curb and gutter that's located in the street. In larger storm events, I would expect that flow to be contained within, this half of the roadway. It does have a slight crown to the street, so this portion is elevated higher than the curb, and so this flow is traveling down the road this way, while this flow that's coming down Bettis is also coming down the street.
Do you know for certain the height of that crown on Bettis?
No, because we're currently using LiDAR, so aerial survey, so it's about a 1 foot resolution, but we don't have field survey that's getting down to the absolute, tenth of a foot
Gotcha.
precision. And from our perspective, we viewed this as a reasonable solution in the sense that it restores the original intent of the roadway, right? There's a low point that exists that shouldn't be there, and the intention of that road was never to design it such that it traveled across into this private property, and so it's just to restore the original intent.
Okay.
Do you have measurements of the flows, the change in flow before and after for the homeowners involved?
We have calculated peak flows to the intersection. I think it is a challenging thing to exactly determine how much of that flow overtops that curb and exactly where it comes back. But because we are not adding any new impervious cover, we're not changing the contributing drainage area, because we're not changing ultimately where the water is going or had been intended to go. The net change in flow we don't see it as an increase from the perspective of this is a defect and we're correcting that defect.
Okay, do you want to show us the other more expansive solution and tell us what that does?
Sure. Okay. This solution is very similar to the other one that we just talked about, but if you go out and you kind of see the intersection, Bettis it's got a crowned road and it continues so Bettis is kind of sitting a little bit higher than Vale, at least through this area here. You can kind of see how the contours, if you follow them in kind of a 90-degree direction from each goes this way and then it turns back over. And so, and maybe that's what Robert Dial was referring to when he went out there and talked about the construction of the intersection, is that if we're gonna do this, we could the better solution would be for these contours to be corrected such that the flow that's coming along this gutter stays along that gutter instead of kind of sweeping around and then sweeping back over. So we would continue that flow path down the street and just kind of correct those things, as well as improve the rideability of the road. So when we kind of make these adjustments, we want to make sure that we're not creating bottoming out of vehicles or something like that.
Yeah, and that is what Robert was talking about. That corner that you pointed out where it swoops down, that's what he was talking
I
about.
have a question. You know, when you're talking about the two plans and how this second, more elaborate reconstruction of the intersection, you talked about how it would change the water flow, but does that have any, make any functional difference to the security of any of the lots on the intersection? In other words, do they impact the flood risk of any of the homes on any of the corners of the intersection?
It's possible. And let me explain. Now, if in the existing condition there is some flow that from Vale that comes across this property over here on the top right, and if there's some chance that maybe it's reducing some flow downstream, I think there is that possibility.
Possibility of what? If the raised up grade reduces, you said would reduce flow downstream?
Well, if flow is coming onto that front yard, and if it's possibly collecting there, if it's making its way down the lawn more slowly, that is serving in a way as like kind of a small detention.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but it's tiny as far as detention goes.
It's pretty, yes, it's
pretty
pretty small. It's
inconsequential.
hard for me to say like
Significant.
definitively, but now if there is some situation where, and I think the concern that one of the concerns that we're here to talk about it is the driveway that's a little bit further downstream on Vale, and that house sits lower than the street, and that driveway, it is hard to say if currently in the existing condition there's drainage issues with that driveway as it's
Right.
currently configured, and
You said a driveway on Vale, do you mean driveway on Bettis?
no, well, Bettis, yeah, sorry, but the address being 401 Vale.
Right.
And-
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I have a question about that. I understand you're saying there may be an existing, like undesired water flow risk based on the current design of that driveway at that house that's on the corner of, to be the southeast corner of Bettis and Vale. It's the house we're talking about.
Yes.
And so I understand you're saying the current driveway, with the house being below the grade of the driveway, that, water could run downhill towards that house in the current condition. But my question is there anything about, like, if we went to Plan A that makes that condition worse, other than what I'm gonna call inconsequential loss of detention from the little hole, as the mayor called it? Other than that, is there any, I guess what I'm trying to ask is,
Right.
we don't want to make things worse for any of the neighbors. We don't want to make things worse for the house on the southeast corner of Bettis and Vale. And so my question is, out of these two choices you're offering us, is one, make things worse for that neighbor compared to the other? Or is there any impact on that neighbor in your opinion? Just feel free to expand, give an expansive answer.
Sure. We are not changing the quantity of runoff. We are simply trying to keep it within the street and towards the intersection. from what we can see from the data that we have available, the terrain data, the drainage areas, site observations, it appears that flow stays within the northern side of the roadway and has sufficient capacity to carry that flow. And that's, what we're able to, confirm.
So that water that we're talking about that's flowing down Vale, that's creating the problem, flowing south on Vale, when it gets to Bettis, it's not crossing over Bettis because Bettis is humped enough that the crown of the roadway in Bettis keeps the water on the north side of Bettis as it reaches the intersection and turns east towards Zilker.
From the data we have available, yes.
Okay.
Now, to more definitively answer that question, that would require detailed field survey, additional work.
But how would anything that we're doing here really make anything worse than the existing condition? That's where I don't understand that. If you raise this roadway up in front of the house on the northeast corner of the intersection, that doesn't change the amount of water that's flowing down to Bettis. It doesn't, we're not aggravating things or increasing the risk for the home on the southeast corner from what I can understand here. Is that fair statement?
I agree.
Okay. Well, then
Does
I don't
K
see
Freeze
how.
agree?
Well, I'm here representing K-Free, so yes.
Well, are they willing to put that in writing?
If we're talking about the threat of litigation, of course, we're going to probably want to dig into this more.
It's already been threatened.
Well, then, I mean,
Well, we'd probably have
Well,
you.
what's the cost, here's one question. What's the cost of the additional engineering?
Yeah, that's where I was going with it. I think we would probably want to do what if we did some additional field work. What would that entail? You don't have to give us a cost number, but what
Right.
would you need?
well, we would have a detailed field survey of the intersection down to 401 Vale and a little bit further, so that we absolutely know.
You'd shoot grades, basically.
Shoot grades, so that we know exactly how the crown of the road exists, to understand the present condition of that driveway. Like, we would expect that driveway to the top of it to match the top of the curb of the roadway. Now, if the driveway sits lower than the top of the curb of the road, that, in my mind, that's a private property correction that needs to be made. But, then we can kind of answer those questions in a lot more, I guess, absoluteness and put it into a memo.
But you could even do some. Once you know those grades, you could even suggest changes like we did at Pleasant Nixon, where we altered the driveway slightly to make sure that you've got the same sort of protection that the curb offers, right?
Sure, I think that would be an option on the table.
I'm confused about this though, because I don't understand let's say that you get 1/10 of an inch survey, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how that changes anything or gives you any more information about the fact that the matter is now that the water that's flowing down Vale, if you make this correction and get rid of this hole that's in front of the house on the northeast corner, that doesn't affect the neighbors. It doesn't change anything whether whether the crown in Bettis is a 1/2 inch higher than you think it is or a 1/2 inch lower than you think it is, from a field survey compared to LiDAR. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. You're not increasing water flow. You're not concentrating flow. You're not really getting rid of any meaningful detention. You're not really doing anything other than fixing a hole in front of a house. So I don't understand how the survey lets you give any kind of a more definitive answer. It seems to me the answer is it's not changing the neighbor on the southeast corner's risk profile whatsoever. We're not changing the conditions that affect them at all. And how could a survey make that more definitive? I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but it's not your engineering stamp. Is what he's saying.
Well, I think the concern that I'm understanding and hearing is that the possibility of water coming down Vale with enough speed that while this road has kind of a crown to it, is making its way across the street and coming down this way. Now, if that is not the concern and not the case, then
As I understand, there's also water
Coming down
that
Bettis.
flows toward the house on the northeast side because of the hump in Bettis. And if that hump is flattened, then that water from Bettis is gonna come in a different direction. And that's what we need engineered so that nobody is any worse off with what we do.
Well, the two houses on the north side of Vale are not gonna see any difference, right?
The two
Because-
houses on the north side
On
of
the
it.
north side of Vale,
That's
because
correct.
they are at a higher elevation than the road.
You mean the west side? Vale runs
Talking about
north-south,
these
right?
Yeah,
two houses?
The northwest side,
Yes.
whatever, yes.
the the uphill side. Yeah,
Looking at the map, the two on the left side are not gonna be a problem,
correct.
right? So we don't have to worry about them. The primary problem that I've seen when I've been down there and talking to the homeowner of concern is the water coming down Bettis does not keep going down Bettis through the intersection. It
Right.
curves north and then it goes across Vale, right in
Yes.
front of their front sidewalk.
Exactly.
And then down the house. So the whole purpose of this is to keep that water that's coming down Bettis, to keep going straight down Bettis.
Yep.
Well, I understand that, but if that change in flow impacts the house, you know, we can't make, if the change in flow impacts the house on the southeast corner, because there's the water coming down Bettis is not going toward the northwest, the northeast corner, it's now going down Bettis. Is that gonna impact the house on the southeast corner? And we don't know that from we don't know that for either plan. We don't have the engineering work to know that for either plan.
I think that's the whole basis of the plan.
But,
think the
but
plan
I think
was-
everybody's on the same page. We want to fill in the low point and make sure that it's not any worse for anybody
Yeah,
down, like,
that's
the
it.
goal is easy and straightforward. We just want to make sure that,
And I like the idea of another
that
getting
we
in
have,
and look at it.
yeah, that we have that. And if you need additional data points to make sure that you're confident that we're achieving that, like, let's get you those data points. I mean, this discussion, you were front and center of why I was not willing to.
Well, and I
press
think
forward.
we don't have the engineering analysis, you know, let's go back. What is the cost of doing the engineering that will tell us what the change in flows are for those two homeowners?
Yeah, I do think that's the next step. Come back to us if you needed, what would it cost to shoot some grades and do some additional field study to make sure that we've got this nailed? And then in my mind, here's what I would say. We figure out who would do that, how much it would cost. We have that done. We provide that information to you guys to make any additional updates to your engineered plans, and then we would provide that same data to a second opinion engineering group, not giving them, just telling them, here's the problem we need to solve, here's the data, and now you come up with your solution, and then we'll compare the two. That's where I would go, and then we compare the two, then we've got the data that we need.
I support that, and I would add, I also support Councilmember Brown's request that part of the deliverables from you guys for us is an affirmative statement that in your professional opinion, that the work that we're doing will not have any adverse impacts on, you know, the other neighbors at the intersection.
Doable.
In,
I mean,
you know,
And if I can add, I mean,
in
maybe-
reasonable probability.
maybe a way to alleviate some of these concerns and call it a kind of a guarantee is the reconstruction of that 401 Vale driveway.
They gotta fix their driveway.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just putting options.
Well, I
on the
mean, I
table.
think it's part of the data. I mean, I think it's part of the discussion for sure.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, if it's needed, if it's not needed.
if there's-
If
Yeah.
that cuts down on cost, gives a better solution, then put it in the recommendation.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
if it's not us, it's them, you know, you can say so.
Right. And I just think the second, my experience in drainage, the second you touch anything, and even if something did not cause it, if something later happens where there's some flooding, it's going to be blamed on this
Right,
work.
and that's what we want to try to avoid.
Right.
I agree with that.
Okay. Super helpful. Thank you, A, for being here.
Thank you.
And B, for spending the time with us. And I'm sorry, I should have pulled you up earlier, and I do apologize for that. I know you have family at home.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I would, well, AB, come back up real quick. And I said that I wouldn't put you on the spot, but now I'm going to. If you had to ballpark what something would cost for us to get, I assume it would be a survey company that we would have come do that.
Yes.
And I'd like a third party. I mean, I know you all can line it up, but I think we would probably just call I think we have usual folks that we work with. What do you think that would cost?
The survey?
Uh-huh.
I'm guessing around 2,000 to 3,000. The bulk of the work is setting the controls for the field survey, but the actual data collection is not that much.
We should have monuments now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Good.
So we'll see what we get.
I'd be happy to have a motion from council if you give me, like you did earlier in the evening, some sort of no more than number, and we'll try to get that done and shoot some additional. We'll work with AB and his group. We'll probably just go with WSB since they're familiar with the area. Make sure that we're gathering the data that's needed. But if you would, I'm happy to
Sure.
take a motion that gives us some opportunity to go spend those funds.
Move to authorize the mayor and city administration to spend up to $5,000 on additional surveying at Bettis and Vale as necessary to support an opinion from the engineers of no adverse impacts on the neighbors.
Look, really good motion.
Thank you.
You have a motion by Mr. Glasheen. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Glasheen, second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion, council?
Do we want to give you a little bit more wiggle room on the money?
That gives them real.
I think that's enough. If it's not,
I'm just asking for a second opinion.
yeah,
I agree.
I think we can get it done for that. I've got a little discretion here and there, so. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you
your
being
time.
here. Safe travels.
Thank you.
You head back to San Antonio?
Yes.
Well, at least we got you out of traffic.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, there's that. That was in that.
There is that.
Okay, thank you, council. We will get to work on that. Moving off agenda item number 15 and on to agenda item number 16, discussion and possible action regarding the process for consideration of any future action regarding amendment of chapter 107 of the Rollingwood Code of Ordinances related to playhouses and playscapes. This is Ms. Brown's agenda item. Recognize Ms. Brown.
Mr. Mayor, this item comes back to see what may be the desire of the council to address the playhouse playscape issue. After last month's meeting, the council, this issue returned to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and council at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting advised that if the ordinance were to return to the city council, planning and zoning, or the city council, it would be required to be renoticed in accordance with the state law on zoning changes. So it means basically restarting the whole process again. So the question is there interest in doing that? And whether or not you would like for the council to take another stab at this before it goes back with a recommendation to go back to planning and zoning, or whether to ask planning and zoning to come forward. If we do decide, yes, we want to address this issue again, then we could send it, ask planning and zoning to come forward with a recommendation. The other bit of information is that when this did go back before planning and zoning, it seems that there was, the planning and zoning original recommendation up until the final recommendation had a provision that would limit a playhouse to 120 square feet. That got dropped out of the ordinance, the draft recommendation, when it was redrafted to address an additional issue. Plus, planning and zoning also reconsidered the notion of encroachment in a setback and believes that if it were to come back before them, they would have a change in that recommendation. Not the way it got redrafted, you could have up to 100 feet of a 12-foot structure within 6 feet, within the first 6 feet from the house side of the setback. And that was not really what planning and zoning intended. So what we have is a situation where, do we want to go back and revisit this issue? And if so, do you want to have council propose a new draft of an ordinance, send that to planning and zoning to see if they have changes or recommendations to it, have it be brought back? Or do you want to simply send it back to planning and zoning and say, please come forward with a new recommendation? So those are the two options. The third option is leave it where it stands today, which is no change in the current ordinance.
Okay, thank you for your layout, Councilmember Brown. Any other council members wish to make comment on the agenda item?
Yes. So, are we sure that we have to re-notice this in order to make a change? Because, why?
Because it went through the public hearing at the P&Z, which is required by law. Came here, we had a public hearing, we took no action, and as a result, we have exhausted the process associated with the rezoning process. So now, if we're gonna take more action, we gotta start it over at the P&Z again.
It would have been nice, it would have been nice to know that before we took no action last time. I'm disappointed that we didn't know that that was the outcome of not taking any action.
That would have made a
that time.
difference in how you voted?
It might have made a difference if we stopped talking about it at that time.
Well, the issue is that at some point, and I don't know the answer to the question, because there's no direct case law on the issue, but at some point in time, there's gonna be an amount of time that has passed, that defeats the purpose of having the public hearings, or it has changed so drastically that the courts will decide that it's not consistent with what the public hearings were held on. So my recommendation is that you start the process over so that you 100% prevent yourself from being subject to a suit that you didn't comply with the public hearing requirements. It's admittedly a conservative approach, but I try to keep my folks out of court when I can.
I have a question for Charlie. Is there no process by which the council can reconsider the vote that was taken at the last meeting?
From a
Can you reconsider and amend?
From a procedural Robert's Rules of Order process, yes, ma'am, there is. And if it had been done at that meeting, I would have been very comfortable with it. But with the time that's passed, my recommendation is that you begin the process over, give the appropriate public hearing opportunities to the public for them to give input, and go back through the process.
And it would have to be both P&Z and council having another public hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
And is there any problem with council taking another crack at it drafting something, putting that to P and Z, is there any problems inherent in that approach?
When you say council, this body, I hope.
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
because
City
I didn't want to
council.
take a crack at it.
City
No.
council.
Yes. city
Absolutely,
council.
absolutely no problems. In other words, quite honestly, it might be a good approach that this council comes to an agreement on what they think it should look like. And they say, this is what we want to consider. You send it back to P and Z. P and Z can make a recommendation to you to approve it or deny it, and then it gets back to you. Absolutely appropriate process.
Seems like that would be the most streamlined to actually get this thing taken care of, in my opinion.
So I have a question, and I wasn't involved in this for months of this conversation. That's why I abstained in the last meeting. Just didn't have. It was before I was on council. I want to be clear. Like, are we? Part of this was we were cleaning up just some ambiguous code to make staff's job easy. But then it also seems like it morphed into we wanted to debate what should or shouldn't be in the setbacks. So we were changing what the code did. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, the way it's written now, the playhouses are considered an accessory building,
Mm-hmm.
which they cannot be put in the setbacks.
Okay.
So and there was disagreement with how that was interpreted, and it's, as in many places in our code, it is subject to alternate interpretations because there's parts that kind of conflict. So what we were trying to do was clarify the requirements and give some relief to allow a playhouse of, a certain description to not need a permit and not be considered an accessory building. So that's what we're trying to do. There's already code that prohibits it, so we were trying to make it less, or not prohibits it, but regulates it. So we were trying to make it less restrictive if it's meets the defined characters of a exempt playhouse.
And can I comment, follow up on that? So, to me, the simple clarification is a simple amendment that says children's playhouses are not considered accessory buildings, period. And to me, that solves the problem, and then you let city staff and then anyone else interpreting the code use common sense and the ordinary plain language of the rules to understand that a playhouse is not an accessory building and what a playhouse is and what it isn't. And some expressed some, understandable concern that, well, if you're gonna say playhouses aren't accessory buildings, you have to define what playhouses are and what they're not, and how big they can be, and this and that, and what they can have and can't have. And I just disagree with that, because I just don't want to get into regulating playhouses. And it's just, we're gonna have a separate chapter of the code on how playhouses can be built, and I just don't think we need to do that. I think we're solving a problem that doesn't exist, and I know other people disagree on that, and we respectfully disagree, because I understand, your perspective and your concerns, but I just simply disagree with it. I just don't think we need to be doing it, and I don't think that there's any real risk that somebody's gonna build a mother-in-law's flat, which I'm not really against those either, but we don't allow them, okay? But I'm not really concerned that somebody's gonna build an accessory apartment building and just say, oh, well, it's a playhouse, even though it's like got a shower and power and windows and a foundation and everything. I just don't see that happening, because it's just, I think that the application of plain language interpretation and common sense to statutory interpretation is a sufficient tool by which to achieve the results we want, which is that, building officials understand that playhouses aren't accessory buildings, and they know what a playhouse is when they see it. That's my view. And that's why I would just simply propose an amendment that just says children's playhouses are not considered an accessory building, period.
And you proposed that last time and it did not pass.
Well, well, y'all proposed this other stuff last time and it didn't pass.
No,
so.
we didn't propose anything. We proposed making changes to it,
Well,
but
I
we
didn't
didn't
put it
make
on
the
the.
proposals.
I didn't put it on the agenda again for sure, but I would, at some point make a motion again that we do simply what I suggested. But I want to give y'all a chance. That's y'all's issue. I want you let you fully air it out and address what I said and what anyone else thinks. But I just wanted you to know that I'm still there, and I wanted to sort of recap that for Kevin Shell, since he kind of asked about how we got here and where we came from.
So sorry,
Go ahead.
I agree with you that there seems like, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm always at a disadvantage up here. It seems like between you two, and you two are not the same kind of lawyers, which I appreciated the explanation the last time. I kind of agree, and I think most community looks at this as going, yeah, this seems like, it's a playhouse. Like, the building official should be able to make some rules. But I also understand if it's ambiguous, it makes their job hard, and we've had lots of problems in the past on much bigger issues in playhouse when it's been ambiguous. So, with that said, I'd probably support if this wants to go back, given what all we know and the experience we had, if we want to go back to P&Z and kind of do the same approach that we just did, what we're talking about doing with Park. If Councilwoman Brown wants to go in there with her expertise and her background in this and work with them to work with something that cleans up the mess, and then they want to have a conversation about whether or not whatever these changes they want to recommend in the setback stuff, or take Kevin's approach as that body does it, then they want to take another crack at that, fine.
Here's my approach. I'm happy with the code as it is, because it gives our staff a chance to look at whatever the project's being built, say, yeah, that is a playhouse, yeah, it's not. If we don't have that, they don't see it until it's built. That's the situation. We can't change that. I'm willing to come up with something less intensive than what we currently have, but I don't want to go to zero. So if we can find a sweet spot, happy to do the change. If not, I'd rather have our staff have the chance to look at it by having the permit requirement there. So that's where I'm coming from. One more, and if we need to take the time to find that, sweet spot, that's fine. We can that's what we're here to do. But the other complication is, and this is item number 17. As I was looking at this procedural question, I looked back at the statute.
Do you want me to bring up?
If you would, Mr. Mayor.
Happy to do that. Okay, 16 is still in front of you. We will come back to it, but I am bringing up and placing before you agenda item number 17, discussion and possible action on the process for consideration of possible amendments to update chapter 107 of the Rollingwood Code of Ordinances to conform to legislative changes to local government code chapter 211 municipal zoning authority, including HB 24 relating to procedures for changes to a zoning regulation or district boundary, and HB 4506 authorizing electronic delivery of notices of zoning changes, 89th regular session effective September 1, 2025. Recognize Ms. Brown.
When I was looking at this, when it was set on the Parks and the Planning and Zoning Commission, looking at the opinion that Charlie had given about the procedure, considering that, I saw that the statute's been amended, that governed the statute that chapter 211 of the local government code that sets out the procedure for zoning changes has been amended in the last legislative session, and our current ordinance is not in compliance with those changes. They're not that big, but then the question is, do we need to get our code, our process amended so that we're in compliance, and then bring this back? And Charlie may have we might be able to take care of that at the next city council meeting if you've had a chance to look at that issue.
We could certainly amend, yes, we should amend it so that it's consistent with state law, but we would still comply with the requirements of state law, even if your ordinance wasn't consistent.
Are we doing electronic notices now? I mean, that's one of the changes. And so, you know, and then, what, does your firm would it, I'm kind of surprised that this hadn't been brought up by your firm to the council, to say, here are the changes from the last legislative session that we need to take a look at and do the amendments for.
Yeah, we don't typically do that unless specifically requested by the client because, as someone can attest to, there are usually hundreds of changes. And to go through every code provision line by line to ensure compliance would take a considerable amount of time. And we do rely heavily on staff who is typically heavily involved in the amendment in the legislative process for purposes of what's been amended and what hasn't. So no, we don't typically do that.
Well, but with something like this, that's a change in a zoning process, aren't all cities gonna have to come into compliance?
No, most cities don't adopt the not most. Some cities adopt the very specific process that's in the statute. Some cities don't. They just reference state law. Regardless of whether or not, and again, regardless of whether or not it's changed in your code, we will always have to comply with state law. And y'all don't have the same sort of planning staff as other major cities, or not even major cities, populations of as little as 3 or 4, 4, 5, 6, 7,000. They usually have a planning staff that is fully familiar with, because they're following it. Your planning staff is following the changes to the law.
But we don't have that. We
Right.
could have the luxury of, but we don't,
So long-
I'm kind of wondering why this didn't get caught back last summer when we had the public hearings on this.
Yeah.
So
We've had a series of public hearings on zoning changes since September of 2025.
Yeah, sure.
Or since May, when the legislation was passed.
Yeah, but we complied with the law. Like this didn't amend the law with respect to how you hold a public hearing. It amended the law with respect to how you can provide, by choice, if you choose to provide notice. And it's a pretty detailed and you have to get it's detailed and it requires affirmative acts on the city. And that's whether or not you change to that notice provision electronically is a policy decision by the city. So I'm going to defer to the city with respect to those policy-making decisions. I'm not going to come to the city and say, we need to amend your ordinance to require electronic notice.
I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm just suggesting you let us know, here are the changes.
So I have asked,
Yes. Here are the changes. Do you want to make these to your statute, or do you want to?
So we often rely on TML for some of that type of input, and it does take them usually a few months to kind of put together all of their briefing documents, and that is a big part of why we send staff to the TML conferences, and they take part in those breakout sessions that's talking about these exact issues. So I did ask staff to double back and recheck some of that information from TML and make sure that we're engaging in that discussion to see what are the changes that TML recommends, and then based on that input that we get to know kind of where to look, then we can get with Charlie and his firm to figure out how to make those changes.
And again, I am, and I'm sorry, Councilman Brown, I am certainly not arguing that we should or shouldn't have done it. But it is not our practice to go through every single legislative change that the legislature made.
I understand that, but can you give us, do you do any kind of memo after a legislative session that says, here are the common issues that you need to take a look at? Here are the bills that will likely will require some change?
No, we don't. We don't do that. I'm happy to do it if requested by a client. And we do have a couple clients that say, hey, Charlie, would you mind going through, a particular land use issue? And of course, we're aware of the major changes that are, could have an impact that require an actual affirmative change to the code, as opposed to a change like this where it changed, basically, there's a couple changes to it, but based on what you did. One is the notice provision, and the other is the protest provisions.
Right.
And we're fully aware of the protest provisions, and if you had received a protest, we would have ensured that it would comply with state law with respect to the protest. But I don't go through we don't go through every client's code of ordinances, review their code of ordinances to determine whether or not those are
I
consistent
understand
with the
that,
state law.
but I don't understand that there's not a general memo that says, these are things you need to look at. Here are changes that are common to almost every
yeah.
city, and you need to take a look at it.
We could do that, and maybe that's something we should look at. Honestly, TML does a very good job of that, and they put out a memo. Not only do they put out an end of the year memo that every city that I'm aware of is aware of and knows that they do. So it's almost repetitive work to just say, here are things you need to be aware of, when TML does the exact same thing for free. Well, not free, you're paying your dues.
You've already paid for it.
You're
Yeah.
paying your dues for it. And so I'm
Right.
making an assumption that city staff is paying attention to the TML legal memos that they're putting out, that they do a much better job of summarizing what those changes are than our office would. And honestly, what I would do is I would just say, here's the TML memo.
And we actually did post the link. in
That's
the-
what I
in
did
the-
on item 17.
Yeah, in
I
the
mean,
one.
on item 18.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's probably,
It's 91. or-
yeah, I was gonna say, it's long. I mean,
Yes.
there's,
It is.
there's,
91
the
pages.
legislature is constantly attacking us.
Don't get me started.
All right, so back to playhouses and playscapes. So Charlie's okay if we go forward with the zoning process and take care of the changes in our code that are required by the new legislation
Yeah.
in due course.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So,
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll take it.
I move that Brooke and I take another look at the proposed ordinance changes for playhouses and playscapes. Bring that back to the next meeting so that we can take a look at it as a council and then forward it on to P and Z for their review.
I'm happy to take a motion for your council to give you permission to do that. I will point out to you, I don't think you need permission from your colleagues to do that. But if you want to treat it as a straw poll, I'm happy to do it like that as well. I'm just saying, it's your
Well,
prerogative
if we don't vote on it, then Brooke and I can just do it and bring it back next month, and then we can
That is correct.
do it then.
That's what I was pointing out to you.
Okay.
You can
Well,
do it.
let's just do that, and then we can move on.
Okay. All right. With that, we will move off of agenda item number 16, and we'll expect that back from you all next month. And I think that we maybe covered the items in 17. Are we good moving off agenda item number 17?
well, we haven't decided whether we want to get our code in compliance with the legislative changes. My vote would be yes.
And what I would say on that, what we are looking, our staff, I can't say that I am. I have asked staff to look at that 91 pages from TML and highlight. Obviously, this can be a robust process, so it may not be everything all at once. But we're going to take a closer look at that and see if there's anything that sticks out. And we would start with asking our council to come back and make sure that we're in compliance with HB 24 and HB 4506 for next month, if that works for you.
Well, and my thought process on that, Mr. Mayor, is that if we have that come back to us next council meeting, then if we also decide to send this playhouses and playscapes back to planning and zoning, we'll have our ducks in a row on that issue and can do both ordinances at the same time in a public hearing. An ordinance amending our code
Oh, I
to come
see.
into
To
compliance.
come into
and-
compliance.
Yes.
Do that, send that all at once
Yes,
to
that
come
was
to,
my thought.
to planning exam. Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. Well,
But
then
that
we'll-
means we're directing council to come back with ordinance. by
And
next-
which
Yeah, and that's not problematic. It's a pretty simple change. too.
okay.
So it will be on Ms. Brown and Ms. Hudson to bring whatever you want
Yes.
for consideration to send to P and Z.
Exactly.
But staff and council will bring an ordinance related to 24 and 4506
Yes.
next month. Got that?
I
Actually, I will take a motion on that, just so we don't forget to do it. Not that we will, but,
I move that we ask council to bring a draft ordinance back to the council for consideration at the next meeting that would conform our code to HB 24 and HB 4506.
you have a motion by Ms. Brown to instruct staff and council to bring back language related to HB 24 and HB 4506. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Ms. Brown, a second by Ms. Hudson.
Can we, anybody else following, it gets confusing when we use council to talk about
That's why I
him and council to
that's-
talk about us.
That's why
So we
that's
talk
why I
about-
restated it, that
So
it's,
legal
it is
counsel
legal
will come back
counsel
with an ordinance for the city council
that
to
is-
vote.
council with an S.
that is correct. That is why I restated it. Thank you for the clarification.
pronounced it very similar.
Yes.
Which survey are we talking about?
Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, council.
We're a bunch of nerds, aren't we?
Thank you, city council. Moving on, well, I think, and we should be able to knock out 18 pretty quickly, because I think we've discussed it under 17. But I will lay out agenda item number 18, discussion and possible action regarding staff review and recommendation of any needed changes to the Rollingwood Code of Ordinances arising from the 2025 legislative session. Recognize Ms. Brown, but I'll say what we just said. We do plan on looking at that memo, and then we will kind of start with the motion that you all just gave us to work on, and then we'll highlight some additional items if we find them.
Okay. And I just wanted to take note of these, the items that I've listed in the one sheet here. Changes for food vendor regulation, outdoor storage containers, limits on zoning restrictions on manufactured housing, residential, zoning restrictions on residential energy backup systems, home backup power installations. These are all cottage food production. These are all issues that have been in discussion in recent times within, here before the council and within Rollingwood. And so I think we need to take a look at those items. And that is from the TML 91-page memo on recently adopted legislation. So
Great.
thank you for staff.
Yes. Well,
for
thank you
taking on
for
this task.
thank you for highlighting it. We actually probably will add it to our Gantt chart for the future every other year. Okay, with that, we'll move off of agenda item number 18 and move on to agenda item number 19, discussion of possible action on the nomination of one or more individuals to be considered for election to the remainder of a 4-year term on the Board of Directors of the Travis Central Appraisal District ending December 31st, 2027. Recognize Alan to explain this one.
So, council, if you remember, we did something fairly similar just a few months ago, where we were doing just the normal appointments for the full terms. Since then, somebody has resigned from the board, and so there's another opportunity for council, should you so choose, to put forward a name of somebody who might wish to run for election to the board of the TCAD. Regardless of whether the city forwards a name or not, this item will still come back as a chance for the city to cast its vote for whoever has been appointed or nominated for it to make the election. So if you'd like to nominate somebody, we'd be happy to forward that person's name.
And if you don't, we will move on. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Thomas, do you have someone you would like to nominate? Or do you know of someone you would like to nominate?
I don't know of anybody. I mean, the eligibility requirements are pretty simple. You have to be a resident of the county and have resided in the district for at least 2 years immediately preceding the date that they take office. So it's fairly broad.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, we do not have a recommendation.
I do not.
All right.
Okay. Unless any of you want to nominate your spouses, mine is listening, and so I'm not going to nominate her.
I was thinking about making a your mom joke here,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'm gonna forego the privilege.
Okay, hearing no motions, we will move off of agenda item number 19, and we're happy to take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
You have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say no. 5 ayes, no nays. Motion carries. You are adjourned.